Minute Overtime, presented by Perfection One. My name is John Bruce, along with Shane Combs, welcoming you into episode 72 of SOSA's flagship podcast. Man, it's been like I was trying to say it the other day, didn't do it, but nobody could see it, so it was like, oh, it's no big deal because our audio was not working the other night. But thank you to Jacob Wise for doing a lot of uh, discussion tonight, trying to make sure everything is working out well. So let's hope that it is. So we did a little over 2 hours the other day, but we had previewed several Tuesday events, which already happened. So we're not going to have to do that today, but we are going to talk about the same information as we did last week, 2 days ago.
Feels
And
like last week.
yeah, feels like last week. It's been a long week. So how are you doing today, Shane?
Doing real well. I enjoyed the volleyball down at Valley High School last night. Wheelersburg, really good team, and got a chance to do that with Dewey. And busy week as we'll be right back at it with the Logan Elm Circleville Thursday night, and then Chillicothe Minor Trace football Friday night. And that's what's exciting about SOSA. There's something a little bit for everybody throughout the week. I enjoy being a part of the coverage.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything throughout, and we're going to try to honor a little bit of the golf and cross country this week, as we have been the last couple weeks. More cross country. Shane's got some good information on that later on in the podcast, which means if it's the same information as the other day, it was good stuff the other day. So, like I said, we had some technical difficulties working through some stuff. We've had some very helpful people along the way that have made things a little bit easier for us here at Southern Ohio Sports Authority, and we appreciate each and every one of them for doing what they can to make this work. So, as we said, first live episode, going to be talking about some of the stuff, most of the stuff that we talked about and what would have released yesterday. And if you have not been able to watch this live, which is completely fine because I think we're on at 4:15. So, like, I understand if you're not watching this live. We will have timestamps later on and available. It'll be in the same spot as always when we put this back out. Probably tonight around like 8 or so. It'll have full timestamps at that time. So,
I know people really appreciate that. Again, I know you won't say it, so I will. John puts so much behind the scenes effort into this, which is awesome. And we've always had that philosophy that we'll talk as long as we have to cover all the different kids, and
mhm.
then you'll put the time stamps out there, and that gives people a chance to go and kind of find their favorite section if they're
Mhm.
not one to listen to all of it. That's certainly fine.
There's 5 different sports that we're gonna talk about tonight, so that's 5 different things, or could be 4 different things you don't have a care about, which is perfectly fine because, not everyone cares about everything. So,
Yeah.
we found that out in a big way throughout our, modern world. So, we actually have a couple extra headlines that we're gonna talk about tonight. First up, one of 2 players this past week who hit their 2,000th career assist. We'll talk about another one later on in the episode, but Guy Academy junior Gracyn Clark, 2,000 career assists, only a junior. Like, what can you say about her and her game that we probably have already said, but can go back over for those who have not been able to see her play?
Yeah, I had a chance to throw out a congrats to her online today, and just a terrific player. If you haven't had a chance to see her play, she quarterbacks a 5-1 offense, and look, let's not kid ourselves. She'd be the first to tell you, I'm sure. She's got a loaded list of hitters that she can
Mhm,
spread the ball up and down the net to, but she just does such a terrific job, John. She's so athletic, so pass on target. She's able to read the defense and put it on time on target to her hitters, but she's also able to come off the net, run down some of the not so great passes,
mhm.
still get her team on the attack. She's a good defender from that setter spot when she has to defend there, and just a really good player. And as you said, just a junior. So
Mhm.
beyond the statistics, she's just really good. But man, that number as a junior, with a still quite a bit of the junior year left, tournament run, and then into the senior year, it's hard to be telling what that thing could end up at by the time we're talking next year this time. So
Yeah.
congratulations to her. Just a lot of fun to follow.
Well, and you mentioned only a junior, but there's no seniors on the team either. So you would think logically they're going to progress and just get better and better. So those numbers are going to elevate even more. So she's going to have a chance to push it possibly a 3,000 career assist, which no one in the Southeast has ever done.
Well, and that's an incredible number, and I'll talk a little bit more about her team later because I'm going to highlight one of her
Mhm.
teammates in a segment that we have that I know you'll touch on here shortly. But yeah, she's terrific, and that team I look forward to talking about them as a whole a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, that's an outstanding team. But speaking of outstanding teams, our second headline for the week, Miami Trace's Doug Grace, 400 career wins for the volleyball coach of the Panthers.
Outstanding. They've dominated the FAC for quite some
Mm,
time now. I know Dewey is giving some great numbers on that. Tomorrow night when we have the Circleville Logan Elm rematch, I know that'll be the Chillicothe Miami Trace
mhm,
rematch in the FAC, and yeah, look, Miami Trace has set the standard in that conference, and people are trying to chase them down. Coach has done an outstanding
mm,
job. Outstanding setter play there from Yeasel, and then I know they graduate the big time hitter a year ago. They
mm.
return Guess and Ferens, who have been really, really good 1-2 punch. And um, again, that's a team we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But they really, really good.
Yeah, just an outstanding program over at Miami Trace. Doug Grace does an outstanding job with them. And as you mentioned, we streamed them a couple weeks ago. Any of our past streams at
Yeah,
all, as long as there is not some massive uh, issue with them, we've had a couple that we've just had issues with in the past where they may not be available, but any of our past streams, especially in the last year and a half, are available here on YouTube, which Shane and Dewey called that or that Chillicothe and Miami Trace match a couple of weeks
it
ago.
was a good one, a four setter that Miami Trace ended up winning in four. But you could argue that Chillicothe kind of outplayed him for a 2.5, 3 set stretch there. But again, that's even more credit to Miami Trace for finding a way. But I look for that to be a competitive one again Thursday night there in Miami at Miami Trace High School.
Yeah, it should be outstanding for sure. But our last headline, which was our only headline originally, goes into will segue into the rest of our show, rest of our script for tonight. 100 career goals for South Webster's Hunter Barnard. Just an outstanding player, a three-sport athlete who does it at a high level at all three sports. He's a shortstop in baseball on their Elite Eight team from a year ago who returns practically everyone as well. And then on their basketball team, he was a starter, one of their guards, just an outstanding player. I know he had double figures in their state semifinal game there. And then soccer, they got to the regional semifinal a year ago, but 100 career goals, just an outstanding player.
Can you put that into context for us? Maybe someone who loves high school sports. I'm not as familiar with
Mm,
soccer. I've tried to do this with volleyball and baseball. I've tried to look. I think 1,000 points in basketball seems to be the
mhm.
milestone that people kind of have the best feel of, even
Yeah.
though it's changed a little bit. We'll talk more about that in the winter.
Mm.
But what's 100 goal? What's that mean? Like put into context just how good that is.
Say 1,500 points, maybe
Wow.
more. Because if you are comparing, there's a lot less, obviously a lot less scoring in soccer, um, less games in the regular season, and it's 1,500 points is a level that not a lot of people reach. It might be close to the 2,000 point mark because it's an accomplishment that not a lot of guys have or guys or girls have. I know the state recognizes the athletes that have gotten 115 career goals or more, and there's not a whole lot from the southeast, and there's not a whole lot from the state. So
Wow.
just by doing that, I think it's a big time standout performance. I'd probably put it closer to the 1,500 because, like, you have, like, the Nick Sylvia that had the 2 or 150 goals. Yeah, so I'd put that closer to 2,000
I
points,
know.
but,
So,
uh
so really, if I follow you, I mean, we really need just because it's not the round number or whatever.
mm,
We probably need to start highlighting a little bit more of our young men and women that maybe hit the 70 mark, 80 mark,
yeah,
that type of
it's
thing. Yeah,
well, I know for a long time there were some schools that their record was in the 70s or 80s, and it
sure.
was very impressive. So now if you're scoring more, I feel like like the skill level of soccer is catching up here in the Southeast. Now, some teams are still bigger, faster, stronger, and
Sure.
that can make a difference for them later on. Maybe help them get a little further along in the tournament. I saw South Webster play last night. You can tell a size difference, but also a very skilled difference, or a very high skill level for South Webster. But one of the reasons why I say what he's done is going to tie into the rest of our show, it feels to me, I wouldn't say underrated. Now our show title is Week 5 Review and Underrated Stars, but it kinda is. So you can think of, there's always discussion on if someone's underrated, sometimes it goes overrated, um, but more times than not, if you're talking about underrated, you can also talk about underappreciated. So I feel like,
Yeah.
I kinda mentioned it on last week's show that I thought Hunter was one of the more underrated at three-sport athletes, but then he hits his 100 career goals. I'm like, he might just be extremely underappreciated as a whole because of what he does, but he's not the only one. So, what do you think makes an athlete in our area either underrated or underappreciated?
It's a great topic because, like any topic that I enjoy talking about, anytime you're able to go through and just mention a bunch of different kids, I think that's a good thing because that's
Mhm,
what we're here for. But on the topic, I think it has a lot to do with how kids impact winning,
mhm,
and I think that there's different levels of fans, and there's parents, and there's family that follow their favorites, which they should do, and then there's coaches, and then there's media, and there's different things, and I think it's how they impact winning. I think it's there probably is a lot of things that are statistical, that in
mhm,
today's time, that maybe there's certain stats out there that do highlight more of what kids are doing compared to certain things kind of don't show up on a stat sheet, as we say sometimes in a cliche in sports. But I will say this, John, and tell me if you agree. I think this happens a lot less, which is good. This happens a lot less in terms of underappreciating, undercovering kids, because you of all the media that we have in today's time, I
mhm.
think SOSA right there at the forefront
Yeah.
of it. But like, you go back, I just wrapped up a 30-year career, and I'd say my first 20 years that, you might have some radio, might have some newspaper, things like that, where now there's so many different types of media that kids are getting more and more coverage. Just like with what I was saying with Sosa, there's podcasts, and there's the interviews, and there's
Mhm.
the game coverage, and there's photo galleries. Back in the day, you might get a picture in the newspaper, where
Yeah.
now you have hundreds of pictures available for just one event that was
Mhm,
covered. So it's awesome. And I know from a coaching perspective, like when we won the district championship back to back in 14 and 15, maybe a little newspaper, a little radio. Then when we won the district championship in 2021, it was like it took an hour just after the
yeah.
game to just be done. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Like, which was good because kids were getting honored. But I think because of that, do you agree that beyond just who scored the most points, or the running back with the yards, or whatever, now you might see a little bit more of an interview with the offensive lineman.
mhm.
You might see um, the kid get interviewed that got the sacrifice bunt down in the last inning to set up the game-winning
Mhm.
RBI. You should have. There's
Yeah.
intangible things. Do you agree with me there?
Oh, I agree completely because it makes it to where a little bit of the whole team is celebrated. And really, if and I feel like with where a lot of these the post-game interviews are going with the players, like, we edit them, and I'm sure other places edit them as well, so you can ask as many questions as you want, and you can c cut it down to where it's their answers, and by doing that, it can kinda celebrate different kids. Like, when I talked to Hunter Bernard last night, and, Bryce McClellan, a couple of his teammates, we got to talk about their goalie, got to talk about their midfield, got to talk about their defense, and that way we can celebrate that entire team because, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a Southwestern team that is unbeaten in their first 12 matches, so you wanna celebrate those things. But overall, I think with that and not having maybe the time crunch that newspapers had,
Very
that
good point.
that could make it
Yes.
to where we can celebrate a little more of the kids, than possibly otherwise, because, back in the day, and I'm sure still today, newspapers have a deadline. Like, they gotta get out and get printed. So,
Yeah.
now that we're in the digital age for us and other, companies, it makes it to where they can take a little more time. they can wait. They can wait for a coach after. So where a team can have a little more time to celebrate as a team, and then you can pull the players aside instead of doing it immediately. I think is one of the aspects where it can help celebrate those other people, and honestly, it gives you more time to think of your questions and to prepare your line of thinking because we want to make sure we're celebrating as many of these athletes as possible.
It's a great point, and I think it's really helped grow the game in each and every sport because of how it does highlight a lot of the
Mhm,
details, and I think it kind of trains the sports fan to watch the game a little
mhm,
differently. You know what I mean? Like I'll talk about a particular group later in our volleyball segment where we talk about the importance of the block, leading to outstanding back row play in terms of
mhm,
how it helps them. How the one intangible that doesn't always show up in the stat sheet might lead to the 1,500
mhm.
digs that we're highlighting, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it is. It's a great topic that I've really enjoyed diving into, and I think we're going to get a chance throughout the night to highlight a lot of kids because of it.
Yeah, and that's something that you said we're going to highlight a lot of kids because we're going to use it in every one of our segments throughout the show, or at least our first three segments as we go on. But uh, jumping into our first segment, which is football, people love their football, especially here in the Southeast.
No question.
Our game of the week last week was very impressive by Wheelersburg, which a 52-7 win over Lucasville Valley. There's another record in this that we're going to highlight in just a second. But Shane, you were there. I was there for a little bit. You were there throughout. What really stood out to you about that Wheelersburg team?
Well, let me kind of shift gears on you just a second, if it's okay, because in order to talk about how impressed I was with Wheelersburg, I want to make sure people understand Valley's a good football team.
Yes.
Like like Lucasville Valley, I see them still as an 8-2, 7-3 football
Mhm,
team. I think they had Cunningham and Conway at the quarterback position doing some different things there, and then obviously Bender and the special teams is a game changer
mhm,
type of kicker, and Aaron and McNeil, 1-2 punch. McNeil had the big play in the passing game. They used him in the slot quite a bit. But I wanted to make sure I say that first so that we then can turn over and appreciate how good Wheelersburg is, because it was just a different level of athlete. I mean, this wasn't as much about what did Valley do wrong as much as like, hey, Wheelersburg's really good.
mhm.
So the Evans kid is next level. I mean, I know you'll talk a little bit about that video here in a second, but I was really impressed with Rucker at the quarterback position, his ability to throw it and run it and do some of those things. I know he threw a touchdown to Miller. He also hit Elijah Brown. And then how many different kids were involved on the defensive side? I know Brown had an interception. I think it was Hunter Henderson at the
Yes.
pick six. Um, they had the young man, the sophomore Brannigan, real
Mhm,
real strong kid running on the short yardage, and then obviously Heimbach is also a game changer for them at kicker. And then I don't have the name in front of me. I apologize. The young man, the kid that blocked the punt,
mhm,
came off that right side, and that set up the Brannigan short run for the score. If you have the roster there in front, I think it was number 21 or 27. Which one's Hunter? Henderson. I'd love to get his
yeah.
name on here because again, it was such a big play. So my point is, you had so many different impactful plays from offense, from defense, from special teams. I was so impressed how they were prepared because I heard someone say going in, I know we'll talk a lot about the Wheelersburg Ironton game coming up here later. A lot of people were asking me, do you think they'll be peeking ahead a little
Mhm.
bit? Well, they answered that question in about the first 5 minutes of the game, and the answer was no. They were focused on the business trip down to Lucasville, and that was impressive.
Yeah. So 21's Hunter or Austin Pettigrew. That'd be
Yes, yeah,
yes.
that's it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge play. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I highlighted that.
So part of the pregame was, our Kenneth Hay was not available that night, so went down to try to help make sure everything got set up. Carson Francis did a good job as always on the call, but also on the setup. You were there. Dewey Daly helped making sure everything was going right, and then Carson Wickline did a really good job stepping
Yes.
on with camera work. But without Kenneth there, and like we got done setting up pretty quick, just talked to some different people about like kind of the game because I wasn't doing anything after that. And part of the talk was, is Berg going to look ahead, as you mentioned? And my thought was, man, what Ironton did to him last year kind of might make it to where they don't look ahead because it's like, you know, that's tough to deal with back to back years. But at the same time, they've played big game after big game throughout their whole careers where they were going to be ready. Now, Valley kind of punched him in the mouth early after the big touchdown, but then Kenyon Evans with that run that what you can see on all of our socials, it's just an
It
outstanding run. He
it
broke
was
about
awesome.
7 tackles. You see, if you really watch it 2 or 3 times, you can just see different people throwing blocks downfield. I think Rucker like caught up and threw a big block later. That's the quarterback. Just going like these guys are playing hard for each other, and then you've got guys making unbelievable individual
Yeah.
plays like Kenyon Evans did, and then defensively they were outstanding throughout. And it was just like I said, it's that play is all over our socials. It's on other company socials as well. It should probably be pretty well
It
viewed.
was gonna be like, "Hey, that was a good 20-yard run. Oh, wait a minute, that was a good 40-yard run." Before you know it, like, "Oh my goodness, he's gonna go the distance."
Yeah,
And it was just one of those types of runs where it's just totally next level.
yeah. It is on our YouTube page. It is the biggest video that you can still see. And when I talked about technical difficulties, we had a technical difficulties where people were just logging in and out to where we had just a crazy amount of views on one of our videos, but it's not available because it is not very good. But that play was unreal by Kenyon Evans and great work by Wheelersburg all the way down. Part of the reason, though, you see that from Wheelersburg, Coach Rob Woodard. That was win number 174 in his career. He becomes Wheelersburg's all-time winningest coach, which says a lot about what he's been able to do since he's taken over at Ed Miller Stadium for the Pirates. Coach Robert Woodard, 174 career wins,
Wow.
Wheelersburg's winningest coach.
Well, the coach in me is always first amazed by the longevity. I
Mhm,
mean, beyond a win-loss record, I have such a high level of respect for guys who have done it for a while because I know the grind and I
mhm,
know what it does, to family and to commitment and all
mhm,
that different stuff. So first of all, just hats off to anyone who puts that much time and invests that much time into kids.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean the success and the consistency.
mhm,
It's one thing to have a nice team. It's a nice thing to have hey, these couple classes came through and they were good. And then all of a sudden you have the elite programs, and it truly is the reload, right? It's just that cycle that just comes, and you kind of see that even into the second half when they're playing some of the younger kids. You're
mhm.
like, well, there's the next one, and there's the next one, and it's a real neat thing to watch.
Yeah, it's one of the better programs in the Southeast, and I actually saw they are actively the most successful program in the state as far as wins and losses go. They have the highest win percentage of active schools. Now, the Cincinnati Academy for Physical Education, which it is no more, which you as an educator would understand that it's not a lot of PE out there anyway, and me as a PE teacher, there's not a lot of PE out there, so I can't imagine an academy for physical education being open still. They're the all-time leader and will probably remain that, but I just saw that stat today. Drew Pastor for Fantastic50.net shared out a page that has that. Very cool to see and be able to find out where some of the schools are. Maybe a school that we may uh, talk about a little bit later um, where I had gone back through their recent history, and it's not very good. And then saw their entire history. It's very not very good, but not in our area. So um,
Are you old enough to remember Carlos Snow
I,
at
I
Ohio
remember the
State?
node,
I I,
the
I
name.
believe I believe he might have been
Yes,
Cape.
yeah, and it was either Wheelsburg or Ironton beat them in the playoffs, and it was Carlos Snow was there, and yeah, that's really the main reason I know Carlos Snow's name is because a lot of the locals remember him and remember one of our local
Yeah.
outstanding football programs beating them. So one of the things that we like to highlight on here, and what we were going to do earlier this week was we are going to try to put this in to the show. Well, and then the audio was gone, so we couldn't even do that. I'm not very good at editing stuff anyway. So you're gonna see this hit later. It'll be tied into a video probably on Friday on our main SOSA YouTube page. But we have every week the Perfection One collision of the game, which is typically from our stream game. Now, I saw a U-37 hit on TikTok earlier. I didn't work today, so I didn't have a lot to do. So, and it was the most vicious hit I've ever seen. And it was just old dudes, just it's really weird. So, maybe that could have been it. But this week's Perfection One collision of the game goes to Wheelersburg's Luke Coons as he blows up a play in the backfield for the Pirates during their dominating victory on Friday. And remember that you can find Perfection One in Pickaway, Pike, and Ross counties, and when you visit them, you will know why they are highly recommended. So it was one of many hits throughout the game. Coons, one of the players that we're going to talk about a little bit more later on when we highlight the Wheelersburg and Ironton game, but just an outstanding performance by that defense because this is a Valley team that had been putting up a lot of points.
It really had, and again, Valley has some nice skill kids, and they just had a hard time getting going. They had a couple plays where they were able to get in space. Obviously, the big play from McNeil,
Mhm.
but overall, that was very impressive defensively. Not just getting a 3 and out, not just they even got involved in turning the ball over and involved in
Mm.
scoring a little bit.
Yeah, and they just missed another pick six. And I think that was right before the McNeil play, which would have completely turned the game even more so. So, now typically each week we do a team of the week. Also, last week was kind of a rundown of some of the really good teams in the area. This week we are going. For me, it's hard to go away from Wheelersburg.
I cannot argue that at all. Obviously, the deeper you go into the year, the group of the unbeaten will shrink.
Mhm.
And but so again, as we said, it's not a power ranking, or it's not. Obviously, Wheelersburg would be up toward the top in a
Yeah.
power ranking, but this isn't always a power ranking or things like that. It's just kind of a team that we feel like is really playing at a high level, or really starting to find itself a little bit. And when you look at Wheelersburg here in this undefeated start, they've had some wins against some really quality opponents.
Yeah, some very good opponents as you mentioned, and they've got a quality opponent coming in this week to Ed Miller Stadium, which we will talk about coming up. Now, if you want power rankings, check out sosaohio.com. Brock Netter does power rankings each week, and because of kind of how the season's gone, hasn't really had to change anything for the last couple weeks, and I think this week has a chance to shake up a couple things if things go a certain way. So we'll see. He's got Wheelersburg at 2 and Ironton at 1 right now, which I think
Hard to argue.
those of us that have seen them either in person or on film, it's hard to argue because you got a state champion and a regional runner-up last year who are off to outstanding starts. So, it's one of the most impressive wins of the season for Wheelersburg last week. Ironton just really put it on Jackson, 49-10 win there. Another very impressive game, which Coach Andy Hall called into the Haynesville Healthcare Coaches Call-in show. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be Hillsboro this week.
No, I on the way home the other night from Valley, I always turn you guys on wherever I'm on my way home from our game of the week, and it's the coach and me the coach and me just kind of really
Mhm.
enjoyed that. You know what I mean? It was one of those where it's not meant to be funny, but
Yeah.
kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like when it's always funny in coaching how when it's you, it's not funny.
Mhm.
When you hear it other play, you just kind of, because we've all been there, right?
Yes.
We've all been there where we just didn't quite play to our standard, and I was talking about the physicality and the different things, and there's no like you know the moral victories in the Jackson
Right.
program. You know what I mean? It's Jackson. So it's one of those things where you could tell that he just wasn't. And when I now I safely got home first,
Yes.
but as soon as I pulled in the driveway, the first thing I looked at was, hey, what are Jackson plays next
Mhm.
week? So I yeah, that I really enjoy that show. I always enjoy hearing the coaches' comments. They talk about their kids, they talk about their program, and that one didn't jump out at me.
Yeah, Hillsboro's 4-1, and you know that they are hungry to get at at Jackson. They probably look at Jackson as maybe they're a little hurt right now because they lose 17-7 to Wheelersburg. They I think it was like one first down in the second half of that game, and then Ironton really handles them. But this is a Jackson team that has a lot of winning experience, and this tough week of practice is probably going to pay off because they're going to be hungry
Yeah.
to repeat as FAC champions once again. But as you've seen, Hillsboro, good team.
Hillsboro's a good team, and I think Carson had some outstanding prep work when we did that Hillsboro Portsmouth West game. But this is becoming the best Hillsboro team probably in about 7 years, I believe it
Mhm.
is, and they might even be the last team to knock off Jackson
Mm,
outside of Chillicothe. So I mean, um, look, they'll
mm,
be a hungry group, but again, he's going to have his kids' attention in practice this week. I'll
yeah.
guarantee you that.
Yeah, now Hillsboro's gone through some adversity over the last couple weeks, but as you said, it's one of their better starts they've had in a long time. So Jack Cornelli tied a program record with rushing touchdowns the other day. So I mean, they're even though dealing with some adversity, still got some really talented players. But so does Jackson. So that'll be a game definitely to check in on throughout. I'm sure Highland County Press will be there. Stephen Forsher does a really good job there. So that one should be one of the bigger matchups in the Southeast, which, we'll talk about more of those. But there's a league I kind of want to mention in this. The SOC 1. The SOC 1 has three teams that are currently undefeated: Sims Valley, Eastern Pike, and Notre Dame, all unbeaten. And then you have South Gallia, who's 4-1. Then you have Easton Green. But when four of your six teams in your conference are 4-1 or 5-0, that's a great start to your conference season.
It is, and what it does is it sets your conference up for a lot of success into the postseason
Mhm.
because you're carrying those points now. Wins are going to carry great value, and you have a chance to beat up on each other, but then maybe go out and represent your conference in a different way come week 11.
Yeah, it's definitely a conference that if things go well and, some of the teams that maybe aren't going to finish at the very top, if they can take care of some business and maybe get to a 7-3, they're going to have a chance to get in the playoffs. Now, when it was a 16 team playoff, these teams would pretty much all be a lock. But with it being 12 teams, it's going to be a little more difficult to get in. But still, it looks like there's going to be some Week 11 football played coming out of the SOC 1. And two of the teams go to Region 27 and two go to Region 28 with Marion Local and St. Henry. So not great there. But you still have a chance to get in and keep playing and then building towards that. Marion Local 69 game winning streak, the longest football winning streak in the country right now. And they're no joke, obviously. So, like Ironton, would definitely be competitive in the upper uh, divisions as well, despite being a smaller division school. So, an outstanding program there. But these are four teams that have played really well throughout the year. Notre Dame has dealt with a ton of adversity.
Yeah.
They had to replace their coach late in camp or early in camp. Um, in about mid July, had to switch coaches on that, and then their quarterback gets hurt on the first quarter of the season. So they've dealt with some adversity and they're still 5-0. They got a big one this week when they host South Gallia, who comes in at 4-1. But next week we'll very likely be talking Eastern Pike against Sims Valley. That's going to be a week 7 game that you're going to be able to see. That's going to be one where, like, I'm not going to be here for week 7. I'll be watching your guys' stream at another game, but that's going to be one where I may be like trying to get two windows open and watching both because
Yeah.
that's going to be an outstanding high flying out.
Eastern's obviously been a team that's kind of been there and done that here in
Mm,
recent years, but there's something about, I haven't had a chance to see them in person, just seen some video of them. There's something about the Sims Valley group I really like. That's
mm.
just something I want to pay more attention to in the weeks to come and just see. But just listening to some interviews, watching some highlights, doing some different things. They just seem like a really hungry group
Mm.
that's just starting for that success, and it seems like everybody's kind of bought in.
Yeah, that they're very young, a lot of sophomores on that group. But if you've seen them in other sports, they've got guys that have here's kind of the tying it together in the underrated, underappreciated. They win.
Yeah,
Maybe they're not making gigantic deep runs in the tournament, but they're always playing for league titles. And by doing that, it gets you more ready throughout your run. And that gets you to be, to me, you learn different ways to win if you're doing it in different sports. It's going to be a really good matchup. Just, we'll talk about it much more next week, but Eric Manley Jr. against Brox Carpenter as two of the top quarterbacks in our area should be a really fun watch for week 7. Also in week 6, or another week 7 matchup actually that we'll highlight coming up will be Unioto against Zane Trace, which will be our streaming matchup next week in week 7. Right now, Unioto 5-0. Head coach Matt Hoops just uh, achieved their uh, career wins record at Unioto, 41 wins now for him, only his 6th season. He's done a really good job with them after his first year, which was the COVID year. Seems like things have been just getting better and better for the Shermans throughout, and he's got a lot of really talented kids on the offensive end, but man, he's got a defense that just flies around.
Yeah, Hoopsy and I go way back. I mean, we were high school teammates, and when it had come time for him to be hired as the football coach at Unioto, I was 100% behind that hire. I
Mm,
thought it was the perfect hire because for the people that know the history of Unioto, here in the last, say, 25 years, especially, maybe it wasn't quite like this in the 90s, but it's
mhm,
certainly this way from the turn of, right around 2005 to now. It was a matter of Unioto getting their enrollment and having it carry over to
mhm,
football in terms of numbers and athleticism, right? So
mhm,
that was the first thing Coach Hoops did. This wasn't a what offense are you going to run? We need to tackle better. We need to block better. No, no, no. This was we got to get athletes out. And
mhm,
then, so once they established that, I always say like Unioto should almost fall out of bed and win half their games,
mhm,
right? So then once they got the athletes out, then it became more of a let's coach them up. Let's do this. Now more people want to get involved in your program. More people want to coach and stay in the program.
mhm.
More people want to support it financially. Unioto's got about 60, 70 band members.
Yeah.
I think they're up to about 1,000 cheerleaders on last count. And my point is, all of a sudden now, football Friday night there has become a big deal.
Mhm,
And they're locked and loaded for what's going to be 4, 5, 6 year run coming up
yeah,
here. That's going to be really, really impressive. So no, he's done it. He's done a great job. And yeah, you're right about the Zane Trace matchup. Zane Trace doesn't want to peek ahead because people that have watched our show here know that I think Westfall's a dangerous
mhm,
opponent. But man, as a fan, it's kind of hard not to peek ahead. Man, that matchup at
yeah.
Union Trace one looks pretty good out there in week 7.
Yeah, that one definitely does. But as you mentioned, a big one this week for Zane Trace as they have Westfall coming in. It's homecoming, so you've
Yeah,
got some extra stuff going on. Both teams 4-1. Westfall is an overtime loss to a 4-1 Circleville from being undefeated. Uh,
good team.
yeah, good team. They do a really good job. Joey and Eli Wright are dynamic backfield duo. Quinn Eberly, converted quarterback, due to injuries, had to step in, has done a really good job. So they are much more run heavy than I think what they were planning on being coming into the season. But Eberly can still throw the ball on occasion. But speaking of run heavy, man, that's a Zane Trace team that is very reliant on the run, and they've got a big, nasty offensive line that does a really good job. And you know, if you don't, when you've got Gunnar McCullough and Jaden Higgins up with the ability to run the ball, and then you're like, "Well, we got Bryce Johnson." You've got 3 awesome options there, for Zane Trace, and then they have more guys that can do it as well, like, Hudson Williams, I know has broken a couple big runs. Grady Stewart played some quarterback for them last year, had a big touchdown catch on the stream against,
And a pick
Piketon
six.
and a pick
Yeah.
6, yeah, and they're a team that has been outstanding on both sides of the ball. They got, you know, they lost to an Amanda team that's much better than their 2-3 record because they have played 5 really good teams and they've gotten a couple wins in there. But overall, you mix that in, Hudson Williams, Blake Brower on defense, and then Mason Hartley, who has 4 interceptions
Yeah.
on the year. Maybe I know he had a pick 6 in that
Yeah.
game as
Pick
well.
six. Yeah.
Um, and they do it in a variety of different ways, and they've made an adjustment this year to be a little more run heavy, and ultimately it has panned out really well for them to a great start.
2 points, one on each side. Again, I've been high on this Westfall group throughout, and I think it's a great measuring stick game. I mean, are they there yet? Well, this is how you find out.
Mhm,
I mean, when you come up on a Zane Trace and eventually a Unioto game. But so far, Westfall's been able to separate themselves from the rest of their schedule,
mhm,
and as a result, it has them in a good 4-1 spot, and they're in a position to play for a no worse than maybe a 7-win
mhm,
season, which would be outstanding. On the Zane Trace side, pay attention to this in the next 2 weeks, and some of it is why go against the run game if you're
mhm,
just running down people's throat.
mhm,
But this Zane Trace team, they can throw it a little bit. Let's
mhm.
not kid ourselves. They have athletes all over the field in the skill positions. So it just it's something to kind of pay attention to. Do teams over these next couple weeks in some of these big games, they get so locked into the box where all the eyes are on the run game that we kind of watched it in the Piketon game. They only threw it 2 times and it was for 2 touchdowns and like over 100 yards. So they have some home run hitters there that you have to make sure you account for in the passing game as well.
Yeah, that it's definitely a big aspect that is there, and they just haven't had to really use it. I know they're a little more throw heavy against Huntington last week, but really in that game against Amanda when they got behind. But it is something that's there. Gunnar McCullough, a 2-year starter, started a little bit as a sophomore as well, an outstanding leader at the quarterback position. So they've got some really good options. But man, Bryce Johnson is a heavy heavy hitter when he's running the ball. And the fact that they've been able to use him on defense this year as well, where they weren't really able to last year, dealing with some injuries last year. But now that he's back healthy, that's going to make these next 2 weeks for Zane Trace big time matchups. And really, after that, it should be get healthy time going into the playoffs for the Pioneers as the schedule gets a little bit easier after this 4-week stretch. Well, really 5-week stretch going back to Amanda as well.
Yeah, Johnson's one of those kids that he can make you miss, and he's got a little speed differential too. But I think sometimes he like runs through the hole almost seeking
Yeah,
contact. I mean, imagine if you're a linebacker on the other side. I mean, it's your job. You're going to go try to hit him and tackle him and do whatever. But like you can't be a fun Friday night saying, "Hey, I want to go tackle this guy 20 times tonight."
yeah, that just does not sound like a good time at all. And only a junior. A lot of those kids are only juniors, but man, they are
Yeah.
a very talented team, and that's the reason why they are at 4-1 right now. So one more kind of a little bit of a game we want to hit on from last week. Nelsonville-York had a 29-28 win
Yeah.
over a good Waterford team. Waterford was up at least 21-7 in that matchup. Nelsonville takes a late lead to uh, take the lead and stay unbeaten for a big time win for the Buckeyes, setting up, it would be a shocker if it didn't get there, a possible 9-0 versus 9-0 when they play Athens in week 10.
Yeah, Athens, we had them back in what was it, week 2. They were
Mhm.
really, really impressive, really, really good. And now Nelsonville has shown the ability there in the TVC Ohio to kind of play up of Division III when it
Mhm.
comes to Athens. But yeah, that was a terrific game. That was another one that was watching some updates come through, and um, it just goes back to knowing how to win. I know
Yeah.
sometimes people think that's a cliche or whatever, but that stuff's true. I mean, you get
Mhm.
in those moments where, just one or two snaps going to determine the game, and teams that, grow up winning, used to
Mhm.
winning, they just kind of find a way, so to speak. And that's what Nelsonville did.
Yeah, a really well coached team. Austin Goyer's over 700 yards rushing for the Buckeyes. Walker Stone averages just a measly 21 yards a carry on 15 carries. So it's not like he's
Yeah.
barely had carries. Now he broke an 80-yarder for one of his 5 touchdowns, but he's been really good for them when they've been able to get him the ball. Cam Sullivan does a really good job running the offense. Uh, if you've seen him in basketball too, you wouldn't have guessed that he was a quarterback just based off his size and strength.
Yeah.
But he does a good job throwing the ball and he can run the ball as well. They've also got Kayla Layton, Noah Loge on defense, very active. They've done a really good job defensively this year. Um, Yeah, it's just a Nelsonville team that is one to really keep an eye on throughout this season because they've got an excellent chance to get to that 10-0 mark, and possibly a bye in the playoffs. Definitely a home game if they get to 10-0.
Yeah, that week 10, if it does get to that with Athens, that's a lot of fun. That would be one to watch for sure. There'd be a lot of athletes on the field that night.
Yeah, would be outstanding for sure. So, one more undefeated team we kind of want to throw out is Manchester, currently 5-0. Schedule hasn't been great, but you beat who's on your schedule, and they've done a really good job of that. They got a tough one with Crestline this Saturday. I believe it's like a 4 p.m. start. Crestline, probably the best team they've played so far. The team I was talking about was Van Loo. Van Loo, who over the last 20 years has really struggled. Manchester has a home and away or a home and home with them this year, I guess. Um, Van Loo, in their 53 years of football, what do you guess how many wins they have?
I don't think. I'm guessing it's not
It's not great.
very many. So it's not one per year. 3.
It's 55.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
so
okay.
that's good. Price is Right rules.
Yes.
You're still in it
Yeah.
because you're under. But yeah, 55 wins in 53 years of
Wow.
football. But like it just kind of just goes to show like how important football can be for a community though,
Yeah.
is that they keep it and they keep playing. And I think that's honorable to go out. And I'm sure at no point are they like, oh, we love this. No, you just go out, try to get better, and it's a great builder of young people to be able to play football and kind of just a shout out for Van Loo from us, even though it's typically a struggle to just keep battling.
Well, especially in that small school football,
Mm,
I think that's something across the entire area to take a look at. When you start getting down in the D6, D7, even your good programs, there's so many kids playing both ways, playing special teams, and then it's just you don't have very many. Um, Sometimes we say next man up in sports. Well, when you have a roster of like 20, sometimes there's not a next man
right.
up. You know what I mean? So it is. You're right about that when it comes to small school football and just trying to keep it because it is important to communities. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's definitely a very important aspect of communities for sure. So I kind of want to switch it up. So where we can talk about our game of the week
Okay.
at the end, but
Okay.
I want to talk about some of our maybe underrated, underappreciated
Okay.
players here because, like we mentioned, with Hunter Bernard and different players around, um, there's a lot of underappreciated people in football. You have 22 uh, playing now. You have some playing both ways, but then you have specialists and you have different people that are doing different aspects of the team. You have so many coaches as well that are specializing in certain things, maybe not as appreciated as others. But I know you had a really good list on Monday when we went over this originally. But who do you have for some of your underappreciated players?
Well, I think a lot of times we tried to highlight some of the kickers, and in doing so, in talking to a lot of coaches, they talk to me about how at the high school level, people really do not understand how difficult it is to get the good snap and a good hold down
Mhm.
and do it all at a game speed that allows the kicker to even a chance to kick. So, like when I was looking at that game the other night, we were doing Cooper Heimbach there of Wheelersburg. It was Bryson Longfellow as the holder and Gabe Campbell as the snapper. And on the Valley side, Aiden Spang was the snapper. The holder, I apologize to the young man. I should have asked him at the volleyball game last night. We did not have him on the roster.
Mm,
But obviously those are two elite kickers. So all of that's made possible by a good snap and hold. Zane Trace, we had them a while back. Preston Lane's the kicker. Again, Grady Stewart and Blake Bauer. Now, those are two guys that get a lot of
mm,
credit for other things they do at a high level, and rightfully so. Sometimes it's these little intangible things
mm,
that maybe even goes underappreciated that they include in terms of what they give to the team. Athens, Griffin Porter's your kicker, Briar Thomas, the holder, Tommy Nowinski is the snapper, and then Unioto, they have more special teams talent than they know what to do with.
mhm,
Liam Mathey, backed up by Tanner Beam. I know Landon Ruth does some nice line play for them. He's their snapper. Jackson Zikafus is the holder. I know they also use Bryce Derringer sometimes the holder. So there's obviously so much more. But what I would encourage people to do is pay attention in the punt game and the field goal unit on the clean snap, the clean hold, and how much that impacts because man, whenever you see one of the miscues take place in special teams, if you're in a close game, come fourth quarter, that can really impact strategy, and sometimes the final score can be dictated just off of old school backyard football. Maybe we were 3-3,
Yeah.
but you executed three times in the PAT game. I only executed two, and we lose by one.
Yeah, it can definitely make a big difference. You mentioned a little bit of old school backyard football. Bryce Derringer for Unioto had a little bit of that. It was a high snap, was able to control it, rolled out, and hit Judah Zicklus for a 2-point conversion the other day. So it's like you mentioned they have kind of more people in special teams they know what to do with, and they're athletes too. So it's like it's you got kids that are able to step out and make some big time plays. And while those are typically underappreciated spots, you see it on Sundays where those are very appreciated spots because it
Yeah.
can make or break a team. If you paid attention to Sunday in the NFL, there's what like 3 blocked field goals in like a 5 minute real time span.
Huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I think 4 or 5 games literally came down to the last 30 seconds. If this team makes a field goal, they win. If they miss it, they lose, and
Mhm.
and that just kind of shows the impact of that. But special teams would certainly fall into that underappreciated, um, underrated type of part of the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now there's a few other players that I wanted to highlight. Maybe they've made some moves from position to position. Maybe they're just playing a lot of positions, like a Bryson Mullens from Ironton, who is their leading receiver, has thrown I think has thrown a touchdown, rushes the ball, is their punter, and is their second leading tackler on defense as well. So like guys like that, where you've got a team of just absurd athletes that can do a little bit of everything, and then Bryson Mullins just kind of stands out as the guy who does everything.
Right.
It definitely can make a difference for them throughout the season to have a guy like that. You mentioned Unioto. I look at their defensive line with Jacob Renner, Bryce Jarvis, who also plays on the offensive line. Two players that make a big impact for them defensively throughout the year. Adena's Fisher Schaaf was a player that was tied for the SVC lead last year in interceptions with 7. A really good two-way athlete for them. Ison Emnett for Wheelersburg, another one of those guys that's just nasty on both sides of the line. Lucas Euler from Zane Trace. He's been someone who, you saw him in baseball this year, had a nice year,
Absolutely.
and I didn't know how big he was because I knew he was a defensive offensive lineman, and then he's playing third base and that doesn't look that big. So then you see him kind of bully people in football. It's like, man, this kid's got to be strong
Yeah.
because he's not like huge like you would think on some of the linemen would be, but he does a really good job on both sides of the ball for them. Quinn Eberly for Westfall is one of those kids that went from being a wide receiver to quarterback, and they haven't really missed a beat in the last couple weeks. So shout out to him as well. And then Brewer Tomlison from Eastern Pike.
Yeah.
You hear about them, like an Adam Guthrie. They're big time. Connor Rutherford, another one of those kids. There's big time recruits as linemen, but him being at Eastern Pike, where they're putting up so many points each
Yeah.
week, just to be able to point out the standout lineman for them. Even though I know he is definitely appreciated, especially by his head coach, because. But yeah, it's just an outstanding team down there in Beaver. So, just wanted to throw out some underrated, underappreciated kids. Also, if you see more, you think we missed some, which I'm sure we did because we cover 66 schools in our area.
I
Which
did
let
have
us know.
Weston Dolls, Miami Trace.
Mhm.
He leads the team in tackles. Portsmouth West, Tilton Rap.
Mm,
Man, he plays with the motor. He's
yeah.
good. He's up over 11 tackles per game. And then on another scale, where Paint Valley is kind of going through a year that's not normal in that
Yeah.
program. I know Coach Penwell was talking to me after film work this week, and the freshman Max Montgomery led them
Mm,
in tackles the other night. So again, that's a program that's going through some hard times that is getting a young kid that's going to start to be appreciated a little bit more. So I agree with you. Special teams, defense, those are some of the things that still probably get overlooked a little bit. But even in offense, it's interesting to see different people in different roles and how they can impact winning.
Yeah, it's a game where you have to have so many different players play together at a high level to win that it is important to celebrate as many as possible because I know coaching other sports like sometimes you can try to hide a player. I know I coached a game where it was in basketball. We were playing a team that had 5 players and they had a kid with 4 fouls like halfway through the third quarter and he just literally stood at midcourt and we played 5-on-4. But I'm not gonna say what the result of that game was, but it was just one of those things where, you gotta have everybody.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
it just that's what makes football so special because if you have one person miss the block, that can blow up the entire play
yeah,
and complete it can even because how violent football can be, it can change your entire season if someone
yeah.
misses a block, misses an assignment, and it leads to a big time hit, something along those lines. But if we missed anybody, please let us know down below on any of our socials, anything like that, um, for sure. So we want to make sure we show appreciation to everyone that deserves it throughout our area. So we've got some games of the week. We're going to talk about one probably more in depth. That'll probably finish our game of the week. Talk about because it'd be nice to kind of do the burg as the bun on both sides, and then everything else is the meat. To go with a teaching analogy, in that. So South Gallia at Notre Dame is a big one in the SOC. Westfall at Zane Trace, big one in the SVC. Big one, a couple big ones in the FAC because you've got Jackson at Hillsboro. I know that's going to be a big one, but also the game that we're going to have streaming game of the week brought to you by Ohio Health and a litany of other sponsors. Chillicothe at Miami Trace.
That's exciting. I mean, you talk about two big time backs with Parte Ligon and Julian Baker there, and they just obviously the great offensive line play and in front of those two special backs and should be a great atmosphere. Hey, John, I think the FAC has some nice depth to it. I mean, Jackson and Miami Trace still kind of come in the preseason as kind of being the top teams. But if you look at the rest of that conference, every single one of those teams way better than they were a year
Mhm.
ago. And I think what it's allowed for is what should be some pretty competitive football over the second half of the season here inside conference play.
Yeah, you've got all 5 teams are 3-2 or better. Uh, Chillicothe, McClain, Jackson, Washington, all 3-2,
Yep.
Hillsboro 4-1, Miami Trace 5-0. So you've got some outstanding teams throughout. They've played a tough schedule. Washington with still what I would say probably the biggest upset of the year,
Uh-huh.
where they host Granville in week 4 and beat the Blue Aces pretty sizably. They came in on Fantastic 50 as a 42-point underdog. They win the game by 15 at home, and that's a Granville team that's going to win a lot of games throughout the
Absolutely.
season. So they've done a really good job. They lost their first 2. They lost to Mechanicsburg and Circleville, but Coach Williamson has done a really good job of settling them back in. That was one of those kind of underrated coaching changes um, that maybe some people didn't notice, especially in our area, because that's probably the westernmost that we're gonna get out of our area, but he comes back to the school after a couple years away and immediately just changes things back to a little bit of what they were a couple years ago when he was there, but he's done a great job. McClain, as we talked about, 3-2, which is, a really good start for them as they've had a couple years ago, they got to the playoffs at 6-4, but really it's about 4 wins a year over the last few years, um, and off to a 3-2 start for them. So good work for them. But um, if a team can beat Washington, they're going to get some healthy playoff points, and I think it's going to get them a chance to have multiple teams in the playoffs. But this is a big one because both Chillicothe and Meyer Trace have FAC title aspirations. If you watch the Coaches Call-In show 2 episodes ago, we had Truett McGlone, Carte Ligon, and Connor Rutherford in here, and that was one of the things they talked about was their goals were all in front of them They have won 3 games the last 2 years combined. They've now won 3 straight games, but their goal is to go 1-0 each week. If they wanna play for a league title in week 10, they have to go take care of themselves on the road this week at Miami Trace.
And it's not going to be an easy one at all because obviously Miami Trace is really good. And if you think
Mm,
back to a year ago, Miami Trace ends up falling. I think I was week 9 at
mm,
Chillicothe. And so if you're Miami Trace, that's a group that's done a lot of winning. They
mhm.
were obviously highly successful in basketball. They've been successful throughout their career in football, off to another successful start. I would imagine this one's been highlighted on the schedule in the weight room in the off season and so forth. Looking for a little bit of that revenge from a year ago.
Yeah, and if you wanna see some really good line play, you got Guthrie and Rutherford, outstanding linemen there. Um, you've got 2 Division I. I mean, those are Division I players on the line. Then you got Division I athletes. Julian Baker's getting some nice, um, offers from Miami Trace, their star running back. Cooper Enix is another kid that's probably gonna be able to go play Division I, possibly a Division II player, but just an outstanding player as well for Miami Trace. And then you look at what Carte Ligon has done for Chillicothe over the last 3 weeks, has rushed for over 1,000 yards. We don't know if he's gonna go offense, defense. Maybe they just find a way to get him on the field at the next level, but he's a Division I player, and he just has shown it in the last 3 weeks, getting the ball and just running hard and doing a great job of helping carry his team offensively, to the next level.
Well, I don't know which episode it was. It seems like it was about 3 weeks ago. We did a segment right at the beginning where I had a chance to talk about Carte a little bit. And, sometimes at his height, people be like, oh, it might be too tall to be a running
Yeah.
back. I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Like hand the guy the ball and block and let him run. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like he's just a special, special athlete. And it is that's going to be a real treat Friday night to get a chance to be on the call for that.
Yeah, should be an outstanding matchup, so make sure you check us out. As you mentioned, Shane and Carson Francis will have the call. Kenneth Hay will be back on camera for that game to also troubleshoot anything as our road tech guy is. And also, it's our K&B game of the week. So Derek will be there, and I'm sure he'll have some road eats afterwards. Make sure to check out this week's episode. Or last week's episode is out. That was at Herdenstein Field for week 4. Weeks 5 from Lucasville will be coming out in the next couple of days as well.
Yeah,
So
because I was up there in the Valley Press Box the other night. And he brought some good stuff up there. Evidently, he left mine down there. I mean, I didn't. Yeah,
it happens,
yeah.
I guess. So, I feel like if they're at the same location, I feel like you guys should get fed as well. So, but that's going to be our streaming game of the week. Now, a game that you can watch on the Wheelersburg Sports Network, also on YouTube. Man, it's a big one. Ironton 5-0 at Wheelersburg 5-0. Ironton, last year's Division 5 state champions, graduated some outstanding players that are playing at the next level, and they're just reloading. Like, it just feels like they just continue. Coach Pendleton's done such a great job of building Ironton into what Ironton expects Ironton to be. So, for years, I believe they're 4th in all-time win percentage in the state of Ohio. For years, they were there. Then they took a step back, probably 10, 15 years ago, took a step back, weren't very good for a while. But man, since Coach Pendleton's been there, they've made multiple state championship games. They finally won it, their 3rd state championship last year, and man, it is an outstanding program, an outstanding team. I'm just gonna list off some dudes right now. Caden Edwards at quarterback, outstanding. Zane Williams at running back. Caden Edwards is a pure dual threat runner because he or dual threat quarterback because he throws and rushes for about the same amount of yards per game. They also have a variety of guys that can throw the ball out of the backfield, and that just provides them with a lot of different options when attacking. They are a team. Zane Williams is an outstanding runner. Uh, as I mentioned, underrated guys. Bryson Mullens is one of those. Maddox Markle, Braden Baker, all guys that are big time playmakers on offense for the Fighting Tigers. And then defensively, Mason Wheeler has like 11 hurries on the year, which is crazy through 2 weeks or 5 weeks. But Ethan Sutton, Braden Lynn, just a couple of the guys on that nasty Ironton defense as well. They've played one of the better schedules in the Southeast District, and it shows because each week they are going out playing really good competition and pretty much dominating throughout.
They really have, and what jumps out at me as I study Ironton a little bit is they're old. I mean,
Mhm.
so the physicality, it makes a lot of sense to you because you're talking about a lot of guys who, when you come through a program like that, obviously the weight room and the culture is second to none. So as you get kids in that grade column starts to read junior and senior everywhere, that matters,
Mhm.
and you're right about Edwards. He throws it and runs it for about 100 a week, and um, but it's the variety that they do it with. When he throws it around with Mullens and Markland Baker, it kind of spread. You just can't put all of your eyeballs or all of your
Mhm.
best athletes, so to speak, one place. Even on the senior runners with Williams and Gracyn and Tomlison, they all have 5 touchdowns
Yeah.
on the year. So then on the defensive side, they have 7 interceptions. Baker with 3, and I thought I saw a stat today: 58 tackles for a loss across their defense. I know Sutton, I think, led them with 8. So they're just really, really complete. And what a test for Wheelersburg because Wheelersburg's really, really good.
Mhm.
And as they come in, we highlighted a lot of their athletes earlier. Um, it's just going to be, and I'll say this, John. Like I don't want to make too much out of this because it's regular season or whatever. But like a big time winner in this game is Southeast Ohio
Yes.
because you and I have been doing this long enough to where I think we understand that the Southeast is trying and trying and trying to earn its keep, so to
Mhm.
speak, statewide. A lot of our kids just get cheated over the years, especially in the sports where it's not the AP prep or so forth.
Mhm.
It's you really get cheated. So when you get two schools like this that can play at such a high level that is respected way beyond Southern Ohio,
Mhm.
that matters.
Yes, I completely agree, and I feel like one of the positives to the additional divisions is it's given Southeast Ohio a chance to make a bigger impact
I
at the
agree.
state level. We saw it in different sports last year, but man, this is a Wheelersburg program that won a state title within the past decade, and then an Ironton team that has been playing for state titles much of the last 5 seasons, and finally got one last year. And I'd be surprised if they weren't playing for one again this year. Harvest Prep really good in that region as well, but they might have scheduled up too much. They may not get in. But this is a big time matchup. As you mentioned, for Southeast Ohio, uh, the Williamsburg Sports Network does a really good job. Now, it's going to get taken down like once the game's over. Like you got to watch it when you got to watch it when it's live. But man, they do a really good job. That's going to be a crazy environment. Two really proud programs. I mean, Wheelersburg had a crazy crowd at Valley. Just imagine what they're going to have at Ed Miller Stadium, especially the first time that cannon goes off for any of their scores. But just real quick, a couple things on Wheelersburg. Got Braylon Rucker, Jack Dorff. He's got to step in, does a really good job
Yeah.
uh, at the quarterback position. Kenny Nevins, Brady Doss, Xavier Miller on the outside, Elijah Brown, Brady Music. If Stephen Hall is healthy, that's gonna
What was crazy about the
yeah,
other night is, he hasn't even played the last 2 weeks.
yeah. So, I mean, if he's healthy and can go, that's going to be a big time help. A lot of these guys on the defensive side as well. Luke Coons, as we mentioned, as our Perfection One collision of the week, but also Gabe Vaughters is all over the place for them. They've only allowed 29 points so far this season through 5 games. They've been outstanding on both sides of the ball. They both did a really good job defensively against Archbishop McNicholas. Ironton was able to pull away a little bit more in their win at McNicholas, where Wheelersburg got a late touchdown when Rucker was out, I believe. I know he had left with an injury in that game. I don't remember if he was in at the end of the game because I'm on an airplane watching it with no sound on because I don't have headphones at that point. But yeah, that this is just athletes all over the field who have done a lot of winning. And I mean, this is an Ironton program. I don't know how many of these guys play baseball. There's an Elite 8 team in baseball.
Yeah.
Wheelersburg's always outstanding in baseball. Basketball, these guys play a lot. This is a game of kids that come from winning traditions that have won all throughout. Two great coaches, outstanding programs. As you mentioned, the real winner here is going to be Southeast Ohio and maybe the Wheelersburg Boosters this week. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
certainly gonna sell a few hot dogs.
yeah, should be an outstanding atmosphere down at Ed Miller Stadium. So moving on, this is going to be a little shorter segment because I talked about a lot of big matches that were pretty much all yesterday.
Well,
Yeah.
when I looked at soccer, I think we looked at the schedule and we want Fayetteville to know that we recognize how well they're playing early in the year. They're doing some really cool things in their soccer programs down there, but because of the gap in their schedule, I think I'm going to have you move that to next week's
Okay.
agenda if that's okay. And then on the first stop here, then I want to go North Adams. It seems like they're off to a good start. Talk to us a little bit about them.
Yeah, North Adams 11-1-0. Their only loss was to Fayetteville, a 2-0 loss there, which
Fayetteville undefeated.
Fayetteville is currently
Okay.
undefeated. So Fayetteville, we will highlight next week because, as you mentioned, they have 12 days off in between games.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's like their county fair is going on because
Yeah.
some people just don't play for a while, but then they have like a kind of
I
strange
assume
schedule.
soccer is no different than any other sport. That
Mhm.
has to be a tough thing to do in the middle of the year.
Yeah, because it's it's kinda hard to get some really quality practice work in anyway, but soccer is so much conditioning based that
Yeah,
you need to keep that up
right.
throughout the year, and man, those kids are gonna hate that if you've got to condition for 10 straight days without
Yeah,
games. It's
yeah,
it may it's tough, but that's where,
yeah.
good programs can make a difference, and it also could be a factor in, like, "Hey, the tournament starts a little later than what we were expecting." That's gotta get taken care of also. Like, that's where I know basketball, I know your brother has rescheduled a game from was gonna be Thanksgiving to, like, the middle of February now because, like, they have so long in between, like, the end of the regular season
Mhm.
and when you can play in the tournament.
Well, and the factor, not I know we're getting
Yeah,
way off that, but like football's going to,
yeah,
play into whatever. So I didn't mean I just thought
yeah,
that was something that might be interesting to give a soccer perspective to fans there. So again, that's completely my fault.
yeah.
Let's go back here.
Sorry. Yeah, so, once again, North Adams 11-1-0. Their only loss is to Fayetteville, a 2-0 loss, but they are still technically in the shack race. Now the shack goes from 2 divisions to 1 in soccer because not everyone has it.
Yeah.
I think it's only Manchester doesn't,
Okay.
and could be West Union also, may not have it this year, but they go down to 1 division, and because of that, you play everybody once, and Lynchburg still has Fayetteville. Now Fayetteville's taking care of Eastern and North Adams, so they are really in a spot where they tie, they win the league. And so all they got to do is not lose. But for this North Adams team, they have been outstanding. This past week, they had really good wins on the road at Unioto and at Alexander, two really good programs that are expected to make some noise in the postseason. A big match on Thursday at Lucasville Valley, who's 7-1-2, and they do it with a variety of guys. They got different guys that can score, but they've also just got a depth of athletes that they all also look identical. Like hair color, you can tell a little difference, but like they're all about the same size, same build, same like they're all fast, they're all physical, and they're all talented, and it's a really impressive team for sure for North Adams, and I think that's what makes them so difficult to play against is the fact that they have that depth of their roster. I mean, just looking defensively, like I saw Dalton Pence just go up and save a ball off the goalpost or off the crossbar in a match against Eastern Brown. And then once it gets cleared out, he's there to make another save right after. You don't see that very often. Jace Durbin, Jackson Baldwin do a really good job defensively for them as well. In front of Thad Moore. Thad Moore, a junior goalkeeper, has been outstanding for them throughout. 5 shutouts, only 10 goals
Wow.
allowed in their 12 matches. In that game against Unioto, though, Thad Moore was almost unbothered in that second half. I was there for the second half of that, and North Adams completely dominated the first 20 minutes for a 4-1 win. was 1-1 when I got there, and then after that, it was just completely all North Adams. Bo Hessler is outstanding for them, 8 goals, 10 assists on the season. Tristan Young, 14 goals. Preston Call, the 3 times or 2.5 times I've seen them has been unbelievable. He's got 14 goals, 6 assists, and then Jaden Reckers, only a junior, 12 goals, 17 assists on the year, has a chance, with a couple of those Fayetteville guys that we'll talk about next week will have a chance, possibly at, Shack Player of the Year as only a junior because he's been outstanding, doing a little bit of everything for them. North Adams and really, South Webster are the 2 teams in Division 5. When I look at it, I'm like, "Man, those are 2 teams that they're, to me, on a collision course for a matchup in the regional semifinal." If seeding goes how it should, would probably be in that regional semifinal with a chance to maybe make a similar run that Minford made last year. Now, North Adams lost in a shootout last year to Minford, which was Minford's closest game until they got to the state championship game. So, I mean, this is a North Adams team. They're hungry
Yes.
and they're talented, and they're pretty good.
Well, and
So,
I love what you said on our appreciated type of talk. You're talking about the 5 shutouts, which jumps out about more, but I think what you're saying too is, the ability of all those people in front to possess the ball or to not even let the
mm,
ball kind of enter the area where teams can get legitimate shots on
mm.
goal. That goes into that as well. So, when I look down through, I know you mentioned the one on Thursday. I was looking at some schedules and stuff. It seems like there's some pretty big ones coming up. Thursday seems to be a pretty busy day, maybe even Saturday a little bit. What's coming up here?
Yeah, so Thursday, you got that big matchup with North Adams and Valley. Big time seeding implications in that one. A win by the Green Devils should probably keep them, I would say, probably in the 2 range because I mean, Southwestern has not lost, so it's hard to drop Southwestern when they have not done anything to warrant being dropped.
Right.
But man, North Adams has upped their schedule. They've done a good job going on the road. This is another road matchup, and it's going to really challenge them. But man, they've been really talented so far this year. Another big one on the girls' side. McClain is at Jackson. McClain unbeaten in FAC play. However, they do have a tie. That tie was to Miami Trace. Miami Trace just put it on Jackson on Tuesday in a game that I think we all thought was going to be a little closer. Ended up being 5-0. Just a really impressive display from Miami Trace. Um, just that's what you need to do at your home field if you're Miami Trace. So they have a loss in league play, which was to Jackson, also a tie. The tie being with McClain. McClain has not lost a match since their season opener. They are 9-1-1, more than likely 10-1-1. I haven't glanced at that from last night. Um, but this is a big time matchup. McClain at Jackson. If McClain wins, that gives them a chance to have no worse than a piece of the FAC title because now, they would still have to play Hillsboro, who's a solid team as well, but it would give them a chance to completely wrap it up with a win over Miami Trace or even a tie with Miami Trace, putting Miami Trace into a must-win situation when they play in the coming weeks. But a couple of really outstanding athletes in that matchup. You got Sydney Carpenter will go against Paisley Pryor, 2 big-time goal scorers in that. Uh, I think this is going to be a chance for both teams to score, but at the same time, the defenses are going to have to play really well to slow down Carpenter and Pryor.
McLean beat Washington 5-0.
Yeah,
You were
so
wondering about that game
yeah,
there.
sounds about right. So McLean moves to 10-1-1, winners of 10 of their last 11 starts, with none of those being losses as well. So uh, that McLean team, very talented, very senior heavy, but man, they do a lot of things really well. Um, and the season opening loss was not a head scratcher because it was to a really good Unioto team, but it was. I think they were a little disappointed in what their
Sure.
performance in the match, and I think now if they were able to go back, they would adjust a couple of things. Laura Henson's been really good for them. Olaker's been really good as well. They're a team that has a chance to make a little bit of a run They got to the district semifinals last year. You know that they want to make it at least a step further, possibly
Sure.
even another step beyond that, as they have a good number of seniors as well. With Lovett in goal, she does a really good job for them.
No question, another shutout there last night. The,
Mm.
anything else on Thursday, even Saturday?
Saturday, big one on Saturday. Now I'll be able to get out to this one. It's an 11 a.m. start. It's Lynchburg-Clay at Wheelersburg. Lynchburg-Clay will be or was 6-2-1 as of Monday. At Wheelersburg, who's 7-0-2, now 8-0-2 after a big win last night for them. This is 2 teams that are very talented teams that have done a lot of winning at different areas of the district. So, Wheelersburg more towards the south, Lynchburg more towards the west, and man, it's 2 programs that are really good, graduated really good players from a year ago, and they are bringing some really talented kids back. Elam Faust, Quinn Wells, Alexander Van Fleet lead that team offensively for Lynchburg, but also you got Tanner Roberts in between the pipes. Just some of their standouts for Lynchburg. Really high expectations for them, as they always have on the soccer pitch for Lynchburg. They're a team that plays with a lot of physicality, a lot of speed, and a lot of talent as well. But Wheelersburg, we've talked about them the last 3 years here on Overtime. They've been really talented. Nick Sylvia is going to be one of the all-time leading scorers and goals in the state by the time this season finishes. He's outstanding. We got a SOSA soundbite on him. Check that out on YouTube.
Very good.
Yeah, really good. He's such a humble,
Yes.
really humble speaker, is Sylvia, one of those really good kids you like to talk to. Also Carte Ligon with a social soundbite as well. So got a couple of those out last week. Brayton Bird in the goal, outstanding for them. Just really athletic, has a really good mind, reads the play really well. Evan Mitchell, outstanding midfielder for them. And then defensively, Clark Weller, Case and Witt, just a couple of their outstanding defenders. Weller has been one of my favorite players to watch throughout his career. Plays the same position I did. He's a lot better than I was, even though I was all district. We made it to a regional final, but he is just a high level athlete. Does a really good job for them, and that's a matchup I'm really excited to get out and watch on Saturday morning. Currently a 20 game unbeaten streak in the regular season for Wheelersburg. Their last regular season loss was last September 10th
Wow.
at Menford. Since then, they have won or have been tied in 20 consecutive matches since, and that streak started last year on September 14th at Lynchburg. And Lynchburg's gonna want to have a little bit of revenge set up for that match.
No doubt about it. Awesome slate of matches coming up there. Before we move off of soccer, let's go ahead and take care of our theme this week. Why don't you run down maybe some of the names of some of the underappreciated soccer players in our area?
Yeah, and this comes from just seeing stats, but also trying to get out and watch some games. So that for me, as a defender, I always like to talk to defenders, goalies. I have so much respect for those positions. And without seeing a lot of them this year, this is where I can probably hit on this again next week. But I'm going to look at a lot of offensive players on
Okay.
this. With one, you know, I I'll start off Clark Weller, one of those players where I think when you've had a player start at the same position for 3 plus years, Coach Estep has to be really happy with what Weller's been able to do for their program at that left back spot. Very active, and outstanding defender that can really participate in the offense as well. Elam Faust, another one of those players we mentioned, he's got 15 goals. He's tied with Connor Gross of Peebles for the Shack lead and goals. And I want to shout out Connor Gross as well. Peebles is a program that maybe they don't get looked at as much, but they've been really good over the last 5 or 6 years as well. Just with what Eastern, Lynchburg, Fayetteville, and North Adams have been able to do this year, they kind of are in that lower half of the shack. But Connor Gross, an outstanding goal scorer for them and player overall. And then sticking with my left back theme, I just watched him last night. Braden Barnard from South Webster is one of those super active defenders, very physical at that left back. You can be a little more physical on the outside because you're out of the box for the most part. He's very physical, has a big time throw, um, very good athlete, and you're going to see and hear his name a lot. Only a sophomore. They start a lot of seniors, but he's one of the key linchpins for their defense. Um, that's on the boys' side. On the girls' side, the leading scorer out of the Shack, Vivian Henninger, out of Fairfield. She has 19 goals on the season, 12 in her last four starts, going back to the Wheelersburg game from last Saturday, which she had a hat trick in a kind of surprising 6-5 win for
Yeah.
Fairfield. Fairfield's had a nice season, but that was a game that I would have expected Wheelersburg to win, but they go and knock off Wheelersburg 6-5. Henninger's been outstanding for 3 years, only a junior. She's had, um, a couple injuries the last couple of years, but that's a Fairfield team that's definitely got some high aspirations for the tournament. Sadie Tiemann, if you saw Brock's interview with her last night, she scored with a little over 2 minutes
I
left.
did see that.
Yeah, so a big time player for them. Only a sophomore. She has 30 career assists, which is insane. As only a sophomore, she was a key for them last year. 21 assists on their state Final Four team. And then Kara Allison from Alexander, 16 goals, 6 assists for the Spartans, or a district finalist team from a year ago, as they look to improve on that this year.
That's awesome stuff. Anything else before we move off of soccer?
Just get out and watch these teams.
Yeah.
There's some outstanding teams and programs in the area, and getting out and supporting them. I saw a nice crowd, Minford and South Webster last night. Um, I guess last thing, Minford had like 7 freshmen on the field last night. Like, just crazy, um, what they've been able to do, this year, even just being 6-5-2 and replacing as many guys as they did. It felt like they had a lot of guys coming back, and then it just didn't happen. Like, some of them moved over to football, some went on to play other sports.
Yeah.
But, they've got some guys that can really play. Look for them in the future. Ashton Reeder, I thought, did a really good job last night. He was kind of all over the field. Now they lose 6-0, but Reeder, a starter from last year in basketball and soccer, is only a junior. You lose Max Louder for the year. You're one senior, an outstanding defender. So a big time loss there for Minford. But I watched Trevor Bourne make 12 saves last night for Minford and was just outstanding. Only a freshman. Watch for Minford on the boys' side in the future. So that is my last thought on soccer. So going over to your specialty now, jumping over to volleyball. We had one of our matches of the year last year on stream. We've had two more three setters in the last two streams. But let's start with that Adena at Unioto match from last Tuesday. We'll shrink it down a little bit because it's over a week ago now. Adena was on the ropes, down 2-1, going into the fourth in a crazy atmosphere. What stood out for you in their 5-set win to stay undefeated?
I just think it's the way they compose themselves and kind of play through adversity, and that even leads into Zane Trace on Tuesday night taking
Yeah.
them to four, and then I believe it was 24-19. Zane Trace had all of those opportunities to get the thing to a fifth set, and Adena comes all the way back and wins at 26-24. So I think it's just their composure in those moments to play the point in the present, and it's just their some of that. Look, I think this stuff's real. I think sometimes you look across the net and the Touche Blues over there, and you're used to losing to them, and they're used to beating you. And I think people have trouble getting over that hump. You know what I mean? It's kind of like in baseball. The last three outs in a close game are harder to get. That's why they pay those guys so much more than the guy that pitches the seventh inning. You know what I mean? Like it's the so to answer your question on the Unioto thing, what jumped out at me is Unioto's got a nice team. Unioto really challenged Katie Burns from the standpoint of you're never going to stop her. What you're trying to do is you're trying to contain her. You're just trying to get her under control a little bit. And I thought, Stanley, who I think I saw in that game, set a school record
Yep.
with the 48 digs, I
48
think it was.
digs. Yeah.
Uh,
Alyssa Stanley's school record at Unioto for digs in a match.
That's awesome. And with the Poi and Puckett and Anderson, some of those kids in the back row, I thought, even though they didn't dig everything up, they were trying to just be there, and they were able to try to pop a ball up or just try to make the volley continue. And sometimes that can lead to a little bit of a frustration for a hitter, and they're able to put up a big time block. And Charlotte Dennis and Zoe Detweiler, they were able to give a 1-2 punch as Kinsley Batson was spreading the ball around and even using White and Patterson. Grubbs played some sets. Watson played some sets. So they did a really nice job of just not backing down from Adena, trying to challenge them and try to do the necessary things. And Adena just answered the bell, down 2-1. They come all the way back and win in 5. And like I said, they do the same thing on Tuesday. One thing I want to highlight here with Adena is on our theme of underappreciated.
Mhm.
We talk so much about, and rightfully so, Katie Burns, or we talk about Dalton or Smith in the back row. Addison Wisecup, Peyton Lee Master, Caroline Glandon, you get limited chances sometimes when you're in those roles.
Mhm.
And they do such a good job blocking. And I learned this a long time ago. Actually, I loved the conversation I had one time with Laila Kelley, probably about the best passer still to this day
Mhm.
that I've seen in my time covering volleyball. She played there at Huntington, went on to coach at Ironton. She was talking to me one time about how when she had a chance to play with some really good blockers, it made life easier on her
Mhm.
because she said you could start to eliminate half the floor as you started to shift against different angles on. And this really kind of started to come to my mind with this Adena group because I said the other night talking to Dewey on the air about how Wise Cup and Lee Master Glenn, they're just always in the right spot. They're so well coached and they're so fundamentally sound. Rarely are they in the net.
Mhm.
They're always showing the hitter a block because even if you don't, sometimes it's just a touch or a block in play. Sometimes it slows it down a little bit. It just does so much for your back row. And we highlight their defensive effort so much that I think we also need to give these kids credit at the net. And offensively, they're called upon in some clutch
Mhm.
situations. They don't get as many swings, but the swings they do get, they need to be efficient in. J.C. Jones is someone who we've highlighted has come on about 2.5 kills per set, opposite of Burns, but they don't play opposite of each other directly.
Yeah.
So what happens is she's up there for a couple of those rotations. Then they get caught in a sixth rotation, and that's a tough rotation for them because you got to think on the other side of the net, no matter which way they line it up, a Charlotte Dennis or a Zoe Detweiler's up there, and that's a factor.
Mhm.
So I think that's something I really wanted to highlight with Adena, with some of those kids that just play real solid in their roles. I think that's really good. But Adena ranked number one in the state. They had nearly all the first place votes. I think Wheelersburg had a couple there. Wheelersburg was second,
Mhm.
who we'll talk about here in a little bit. But just a really good team, and they continue to find a way. They have a rotation or two that they got to continue to try to find more offense, but they're obviously a really complete volleyball team.
Yeah, just what I thought stood out was just how when they got into those tough spots, because Kyla Puckett did a really good job of serving for
She
Unioto,
did.
and I thought she really kept them off balance. But how they were able to compose themselves and get out of it, and then carry that over, even when it felt like maybe Burns didn't have her best game. What she was able to do at the biggest moments. In that first set, it seemed like she got woke up a little bit. Don't ever chant overrated at someone who's very properly rated. That's something that years of watching sports, typically that balances out because
You kind of like it.
yeah,
It's really the ultimate
yeah,
compliment. I mean, like some people, it rubs them the wrong way or whatever. It's really quite a compliment
yeah,
in terms of that type of thing. But you're right. That's kind of poking the bear there a little bit in that opening set.
yeah, but she woke up in a big way in that first, and then in the fifth, when it got to 10-10, they win the point, and then she goes back to serve, and they win at 15-10. So I was really impressed with what she was able to do on a maybe on a night she didn't play her best, where her teammates did a really good job of helping her out and still setting her up into positive situations because like Courtney Sowers, Allie Bossert were outstanding
Setting.
setting throughout the game. But man, I thought Burns showed why she's such a highly thought of athlete when the game was on the line.
What I love about Burns the most is she's such a great teammate. She never shies away from the moment. So even when I see her struggle a little bit, she just stays with it. She
Mhm.
constantly, she never shies away from, wanting the ball. And I think the biggest improvement that she's made that's going to show up big time in postseason honors across the entire state is the all around game.
Yes.
Everyone knows she can go put it away at the net on those three rotations, but she's an improved blocker defensively. She impacts it as she showed in the crunch time the other night as a server. And then even, I mean, look, when you play in the back row with Dalton and Smith and serve receive and things like that, they're going to come at you, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to serve it to them. What I mean?
Right.
So it's one of those where they're going to come at, and she's just constantly added that to her game and improved. Just a great competitor. Just it's real treat to follow her. To be honest.
Yeah, in that match, she had 15 digs, 8 blocks, and then also 4 aces and was 100% serve percentage. So she was outstanding all around. Even if the hitting didn't feel like it was there all game, she did it be all around, which makes her such an outstanding
Yeah,
player.
and the thing about the serving sometimes, it's not like she's just, tossing it over right in the middle of the court.
Yeah,
She's serving
yeah,
tough
4
and she's
aces.
going, yeah,
Yeah,
she's going at her spots. So again, that's what I mean by not being afraid of the moment. A lot of times it's easy, oh, fifth set, I don't want to mess up or whatever. It was one of those where she would get one and you could almost see it in her eyes. She couldn't wait to get the ball back so she could serve again. So yeah, she's a great leader, great competitor, obviously super talented.
yeah, 19% of her uh, serves in that match were aces. With Kylie Puckett for Unioto, hers was 18.2%. So
That was that
yeah,
sixth rotation
yeah.
that Unioto dominated. I don't have the numbers in front of
Mm,
me. I don't need the numbers to know that they dominated them because I watched it. But
yeah.
like that sixth rotation was a problem there. But to Adena's credit, again, when the game was on the line in that fifth and sixth rotation, that's when Batson was serving and when Puckett was serving. To Adena's credit, they found a way. I
Mhm.
mean, they stepped up and made some plays. And again, that's that underappreciated winning X factor that they have in that program.
Yeah, and then, just you mentioned Charlotte Dennis, Zoe Detweiler.
Very good.
Dennis with 23 kills in the match, Detweiler with 18. For Adena, Burns had 22 and JC Jones with 12, including the big one, when it was 24-23 in the 4th to force a 5th, and, that's a big time confidence booster for that sophomore, and as she said in that interview after, part of the value of Katie Burns, which you mentioned, of her leadership, was that she's helping Jones get ready for that big role in the future. As she's like, she talks to me every day. That was a really good interview
Really good.
with JC Smith, Kimmy Dalton, and JC Jones afterwards. That's on our YouTube page as well. You can see that on Facebook as well as, but some outstanding players for the Warriors as they are now 16-0 after that 4-set win over Zane Trace.
How dangerous is that Zane Trace team?
Yes.
That's a team you do not want in your bracket there because they start getting into that district semifinal level or whatever. Man, they become really, really
Mm,
dangerous.
yeah, they're an outstanding program as well as they made it to the regionals a season ago. So going over to Saturday's match, a little bit quicker of one. Hillsboro at Waverly. Waverly looked really good on Saturday morning.
Yeah, Hillsboro coming off a tough loss on Thursday night to Miami Trace. They come on Saturday, no JV match. It's kind of a late start. I don't know if it was a bus situation. I'm not even sure, but it's just we've all been there before. It's just it had kind of a dead atmosphere, and they just struggled to get going. Now,
Mhm.
credit to Waverly, they jumped out 6-0 in the first set, 7-0 in the second set, and they just never looked back. Waverly, 12-3, I think 13-3 now. I think they just beat South Webster.
Beat them quick
Yeah,
last night. Yeah.
this Waverly team's really, really good. Now, Sydney Johnson's the one that's going to get a lot of headlines, and rightfully so.
Mm.
She's phenomenal on both the offensive and defensive side of things. But Knight, the freshman, really good. Royster, Gillett, Roberts. Uh, they still have a tough stretch of schedule coming up. They'll have another South Webster match. They still have Bird. They'll have Valley again, who I think Valley's one of their three losses, and then they play Chillicothe in the non-league. So who's starting to come on. But no, this Waverly team, the word that jumped out at me was athletic. I was real impressed with them just across the board, a little bit of their length and athleticism and the way they can play. Hillsboro will be fine. They they have real nice 1-2 punch in Wagner and Davis as hitters and passers. And sealing their setter does a really good job. I like her game. They just really struggle in some serving efficiency, and they struggle in the serve receive, and it just really never did give them a chance because they were fighting uphill. It seemed like the entire match. They stuck their nose in the third set a little bit, and then it got away. But I know Hillsboro's been competitive in that FAC. It's a tough matchup for Miami Trace, who has beaten them, but it's been tight. And then, like I said, now it'll be Chillicothe, Miami Trace, but Hillsboro's been right there at the top over the last 2 years, and they too, in the right matchup, could be dangerous in the tournament
Mhm.
because Wagner and Davis, along with the setting of ceiling, does give them a chance.
Yeah, for sure. And like with the Unioto Adena matchup, the Hillsboro and Waverly matchup, you can go back and rewatch. And then Tuesday, before we get into that match, we had another, you know, amazing achievement, as we mentioned earlier with Gracyn Clark of Gallia Academy. Another 2,000 career assists mark. Ella Chamberlain for Wheelersburg. The senior has just been outstanding in her time as the Pirate setter.
Is so steady. I mean, such a great leader. She has great body language on the floor. You can tell she has great rapport with every hitter. You know, I think of it as like a catcher, John. Like if you are handling a pitching staff, right? Maybe this is a hard thrower, this is a soft thrower. You know, this person needs you to set the target up here because this is their tendency. The setter is the same way. She has such great rapport with every hitter. She understands where Mullens on the outside, where she can kind of give her different types of balls.
Mm.
And then in the middle, she has great rapport with some of the quicks. I thought Miller was really good last night in that Valley win that we did. Um, but but yeah, she's just the quarterback of it all. And when you're that rock solid at setter, that's the person that's touching it every
Mm.
time over the net on that second ball. And she's just really good. You know, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and she mixes it up, but at the same time she understands where the ball needs to go. For example, last night I thought she did a great job. I always like to see a setter get their go-to hitter off quick. She got Mullens going in the first set for like 6 or 7 kills. Well, then she started to spread the ball up and down the net, get a lot of different people involved. Her and her middles were on the same page last night. Even used her opposite there a little bit with Walker and Hull and Mullens and Woodward, and you know, just really good. And uh, just a special achievement for her, and she's far from done.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, just she doesn't make a lot of mistakes. This year, she's only had 6 ball handling errors in about half as many sets as last year. She had 25 last year in about double the game time. So she's not even remotely close to that. So she's really lowered the amount of errors that she's made. Each year, she's lowered the amount of errors she's made. She's averaging more assists per set this season than she has the last two over her career, averaging 9.3 assists per set for her career, but 10.5 a set this season. She's been outstanding for them, and one of the big reasons why they hope to make another big run. Reached the regional final last year. I know they are wanting to make it at least a step further this year.
Yeah, ranked number 2 in the state behind Adena, as I said earlier. Now a lot of that on the ball handling, you know, there's been some rule
Yeah.
changes and so forth, but nonetheless, the assists have gone up, because of her of her chemistry with her hitters. I really believe that. Like they were
Mhm.
good last year, they
Mhm.
were. But I just see a different level of rhythm. Now, last night they were obviously in better rhythm because they passed on target a lot better. When I watched them against Gallia, it was a little bit more of a struggle. Chamberlain was on the run a little bit more. Not a lot of that to do with the talent
Yeah.
on the other side of the net. The but even then, what makes a Chamberlain so special, I mentioned it with Clark earlier, is their ability. The pass doesn't have to be perfect. Their
Mhm.
ability to come off the net to run one down and still understand with a certain type of set or a bump set or whatever to still give some of their hitters a chance to go on the attack.
Mhm. Yeah, she's been outstanding. But a little bit about that match last night. Wheelersburg over Valley in 3. Pretty quick one for the Pirates. So
It was, but let me say this: Valley's a year away now. They're in D6 this year. I think they're dangerous
Mm,
now, but Valley is about a year away from really taking off. I wouldn't compare it, maybe quite to Gallia Academy a year ago, but it's the same type of thought. Like
mhm,
when you watch them play, here's a team this year probably going to go on to win, let's say 16 game matches.
mm,
Okay, by next year, all of a sudden now winning 20 is certainly a goal that's
mhm.
realistic. You know, they're really good at setter, nice size with Edwards there, and then uh, I was real impressed with Williams out of the middle. Now they had trouble getting their go-to Crispin going last night, but they have youth across the roster. I think just the one senior, really good. But then last night Wheelersburg was just really complete. Like I said, they got great play out of their middle. Glean was really good leading the defensive attack. Yeah, I highlighted Woodward last night on the air. When she's all said and done, we're going to look back. You talk about stuff in the stat sheet. We're going to look back with the kills and the digs and the aces and the winning.
Yeah,
Uh, really good. And so, um, yeah, and then what was so funny, like they started using some of their bench late in the night. They bring a freshman off the bench. I think her last name was Skeen.
yeah.
She takes a couple swings, and you're like, oh, yeah. So it's like, so when Dewey's reading off that they win like 20 games a year for a decade,
Mm,
it makes a lot of sense on like, oh, okay, there's the next one. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, so it's
yeah. There's a reason why Wheelersburg's Wheelersburg, and
yeah,
it's because the pipeline is rarely not full of outstanding athletes. But you mentioned Valley, you mentioned Chrisman, one of the really good athletes in our area across the board as well. I got to watch her in softball, really good softball pitcher
yeah.
as well. So not surprised to hear that
Just
she's,
saw it get going
yeah,
last night, and give credit to Wheelersburg there, and the attention she was drawing probably had a lot to do with some of the other girls that did get because they had about 4 or 5 other girls probably up over their average, but they just couldn't quite get her going.
yeah, she seems like she is on pace for 1,000 career
Yeah,
kills, which would be outstanding. But you mentioned Valley; they're not done. They've got a lot to play for, especially in Division Six. So glad that we were able to get down there and get some eyes on them as they are now 12-3 on the season. A big one, as you mentioned, with Waverly coming up tomorrow night. So moving on. Speaking of tomorrow night, we've got a big one live stream sponsored by Ohio Health. And as we mentioned earlier, a bevy of other sponsors that we appreciate every single one of them. Be there. Get to if it's bad camera work, blame me because I'll have the camera work for that one. But Circleville coming off of a huge win last night will be at Logan Elm. One of our better streams that we've had this year was Logan Elm at Circleville. Logan Elm, one of the better teams in the Southeast District. Circleville proving last night why they're one of the better teams in the Southeast District as well.
this has the time. This has a chance to be an all time. I mean,
Mhm.
this really does. I mean, obviously the 5 set thriller the first time, and we've had some really good ones this year, as you've heard me say. The Gallia Wheelersburg, the Unioto Adena we just talked about, the first round with Logan Elm Circleville. Logan Elm comes in. I believe they're number 2 in the recent poll. They're 13-2, led by the outstanding uh, player King, and people who have listened to our overtime and listened to our volleyball coverage. They know one of my real favorites when we talk about underappreciated on that
Mm,
theme. Kennedy Groff, she's terrific, and I always think Adeline Smith's another one that's underrated because I think they kind of go when she goes. I mean, obviously, Claire King's going to be there. She's going to show up in the
mm,
big time when Adeline gives them some offense. I think they go to another level. 9 seniors, I think it is on that
mm,
roster. John, that's an old team, and they lost to New Lex and they lost to Bloom Carroll. And that's it. But speaking of Bloom Carroll, Circleville comes back and gets Bloom
mm,
Carroll last night at 5. And I think they're down 1-0, then they're down 2-1, and they come back and win 25-20, 15-12, and you know um, they've played some high level volleyball here lately. They had a tournament over the weekend where they beat Wheelersburg, and then they come and they beat Bloom Carroll on the
mm,
Tuesday night, and they're at 12-5, which you look at that record, but man, they've played some
mm.
really good competition, and they might just be finding it right at the right time.
I watched them earlier in the year. Allie Thornsley's really, really
Mhm.
good, and I'm anxious to see what they're doing with their rotation now. She's outstanding with her hands, and as a setter, I know she's hit a lot in the past. I don't know if they've changed that up. I'm anxious to see it tomorrow night, but she's really, really good. I know she was fighting a little bit of an injury, playing through some
Mhm.
discomfort earlier in the year, but she's outstanding. And then Addison Edgington, Drew Hoskins, Maddie Blake, I thought was really good the first round in this there. But they too have a pretty experienced group. So yeah, what a treat! I think that's going to be a little bit of later start time
Mhm.
kind of nights. I think it's triple header, and usually the SOSA theme is wherever we go, we get a bunch of three setter. Although we had straight set JV
Yeah, it was an early
last
start last night.
yeah. So, but in all seriousness, with the triple header, you know, don't give up on us tomorrow night because it'll be worth the wait.
Yeah, the first one was a classic, and I'm sure tomorrow night's will be as well. Big rivalry match, and should be an outstanding crowd and atmosphere overall. Love, for being a smaller gym out of the newer ones. Really enjoy going to Logan Elm, and I feel like they treat us very well whenever we're there as well. So look forward to that. But sticking with our theme, you mentioned Kennedy Groff as one of the underrated players in our area. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Throw, two or three out, and then because I've already talked about some, and then I know you
Mhm,
have some, and I'll comment on those as well. But I wanted to go back to Gallia Academy because we highlighted Gracyn Clark earlier, and she's so good, and she spreads it out to some really talented hitters like Aspen Barnes and Abby Clark and Aubrey Frazier, and their team ranking is kind of climbing. You could almost say that team's been a little underappreciated with their undefeated start and where they're at in the rankings. I know they have a busy week, and if they could come out the other side of it, um, they would get to 17-0. They'd have four of their last five on the road, but I believe that final home game there would be Chesapeake. So I'll get to that in a second. But first, I wanted to highlight Chloe Bennett. Chloe Bennett, I think, is really underappreciated because it's so fun to watch Clark set up a Barnes or a Clark or a Frazier
mhm,
and watch them go to work, or even Saunders and some other kids on that team. The it's a situation where Bennett, to me, is the biggest jump from last year to this year.
mm,
They were an 18-win team last year, 18-6. They probably had one or two matches they'd like to have back, and that's kind of their growth. If I was watching them a year ago, and obviously the talented Barnes as a freshman this
mhm,
year makes it a little bit of a
mhm,
difference. She's pretty good, you know. But if I was still picking out something, it would be their ability to pass the volleyball, and I just think Bennett's gone next level. She's been anywhere from 5 to 6 digs per set throughout the year, and I was just really, really impressed with how hard she competed against Wheelersburg when I had a chance to watch them in person earlier this year. So I wanted to throw her name out there. It's really underappreciated because in all that star power, sometimes you get swallowed up. But let's make sure we recognize the job she's doing. And then I mentioned Chesapeake, what could be one of the final hurdles there for them to chase an undefeated season. Chesapeake's got a nice player named Aaron Lowe. Lowe has a chance to be one of those all around players, right around 500 kills,
mhm,
1,500 assists, 1,000 dig,
mhm,
200 ace type kids. I mean, you're talking about again across the board the ability to impact. But I know Chesapeake already up, already clinched the winning
mhm,
season, I believe, and they're second place there in that conference. I know Abby Isaacs, they're one of their top hitters. Lila Ferguson's another kid that jumped out at me on the stat page, but I get the impression that Lowe really makes them go,
mhm,
from start to finish. So that'll be one, and then on the Miami Trace, I would throw out that we talk about Lauren Guest and Lauren Ferentz with the setter play of Kylie Easel. But again, let's go and get another passer there.
mhm.
Kiana Ackley, she's someone about 5.5 digs. And obviously, Miami Trace has done a lot of winning and she helps them go. Allison Carter's another solid passer there. So just kind of wanted to throw out some love to some of the defensive players because I,
Mhm.
I know sometimes the highlight reel is the big time, set it up, hammer it.
Yeah,
Sometimes those kids that are keeping the play alive or serve receiving and passing on target makes that all possible.
yeah, it definitely does. I've seen a few this year where I haven't got out to a ton of volleyball because I'm trying to get to as much soccer as possible. And then also, I'm like all over the country at times. So that kind of eliminates some of the things I can do. But um, one person, and this is going to go to one team I'm going to talk about a couple of different people. Larkin Volgamore from Piketon. She just reached her 1,000 career assists the other day. She's at 7 assists per set, which is good for second in the SEC behind Kinsley Batson of Unioto. Uh, she's done a great job of guiding their offense. They are 5-1 outside of league play. They really compete at a high level once you get outside of the SVC. And part of the reason is because Volgamore does such a great job of leading that team offensively. So she's uh, been one of the more underappreciated players because they haven't had a lot of wins in league play. And because of that, you don't hear a lot about what Piketon's able to do. But they've got several players that can really make them a team that you don't want to see in the postseason because they've got a big hitter, which I'm going to talk about in a second. They've got Sadie Childers has one of the best serves in the district. Just a really high level attack out of her on the serve. Really impressed with what I was able to see out of her. But Volgamore does a great job of leading them offensively. But Ryan Moore, their big hitter, 3.6 kills per set, fourth in the SEC, behind Katie Burns, Carly Snavely of Zane Trace, Braley Hosworth of Huntington. So there's some big time names that you hear, and that means she's in front of the Unioto girls as well. So Ryan Moore does an outstanding job. And I had mentioned something, trying to get some help from Derek on getting some names on this because, like, we see what we see. He sees other games as well. So maybe, he's the one who he really pointed out Volgamore. And then when I mentioned Moore, he was like, well, it's because she's getting set up like really well by Volgamore and kind of, the joking way of like trying to sell his choice, which was a very good choice anyway. But then I was like, no, I watched it in warmups. It's like I didn't have to see it in the game. Then she was outstanding in the game that I saw, but in warmups, it was like, oh, I'm pretty sure this kid's gonna be able to play. And then she did it in the game, but really good hang time, really good power from a middle hitter, really good timing as well, very athletic. And you're going to see it in a variety of sports coming up this year as well. Only a junior, a really talented player for Piketon. I think those two, along with Childers, makes them a really tough matchup.
I like that from the standpoint of I think what happens with say like a Python is you're playing in the SEC, it's such a grind, 14 match grind, times misery,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes a hitter doesn't get a chance to showcase their entire skill set because maybe their overall team's just overwhelmed. Like last night, I saw some pieces from Valley I was
Yeah.
mentioning they couldn't really go on their normal attack. I mean, obviously they're a good volleyball team. They're going to go
Yeah.
win 15, 16 matches or whatever. But like Wheelersburg overwhelmed them. So a lot of times what happens with Piketon, maybe their overall serve receiver, their defense just gets overwhelmed. When they're able to play, Evolga more and more start to show a little bit of like, hey, we can play a little
Mhm.
bit in these areas. And that's why in a matchup, when they're able to clean up some of those other areas and those two are able to go,
Mhm.
now all of a sudden they can take over a match, so to speak. So I think it's a great pick from a standpoint of I think we forget sometimes in the bottom half of the SBC how hard that is, but then how it always shows up in the postseason because even at Paint Valley going into the small division or Piketon going in, it seems like the SBC, the only way to get them out of the tournament some years is to have them be in the
Mhm.
bracket and beat up on one another. That's a great pick.
Yeah, and then for my last two, I went into the Southern Hills League or Southern Hills Athletic Conference. It was the Southern Hills League for a long time, but Southern Hills Athletic Conference. Remy Moon from Fairfield, all Ohio high jumper as a freshman, outstanding athlete, only a junior. She's over 500 career kills at this point, on track to get to 1,000. If she completes this year at a high level. She's leads the Shack by almost 100 kills total. Like, she's just been absolutely outstanding, and then you look at her all-around game as well. She's over 700 digs, so likely gonna get to 1,000 there as well. She's at close to 80 aces on her career. She's been just a really talented player. for Fairfield. They got off to a really hot start. They were 11-2 to start. They had won 10 straight, which was a program record to start their season, and they've hit a little rough patch here. But behind Moon, I believe that the Lions can turn things on the upswing. But then, um, you know, North Adams. You've got the Pistols, Ava and Emma Pistol, two big time hitters for them. Paige Evans is another big time hitter, but they're getting the ball from Natalie Reagan. Reagan over 2,400 career assists for North Adams. She's got an outside chance to be the school's all-time assist leader. Sierra Kendall is their all-time assist leader. Um, is about 350 assists ahead of her. If she can reach that number, or she can reach the same amount of assists that she had last season, she will pass Kendall, which will be, it'll be tight. But if she's able to, then Jaden Mace from Alexander is in reach as well. She was like 20 to 25 assists more than Kendall. Those are the top two assist uh, leaders in Southeast District history. So that's something to look for this year. Natalie Reagan has been outstanding for 4 years for North Adams. 11-4 now. The Green Devils are very likely to repeat once again as Schaaf 1 champions, and it's a lot behind Natalie Reagan. But I also want to throw this out there. Uh, when Natalie Reagan was in eighth grade, their setter was Sarah Kendall. So the last 8 years, North Adams has just had an absolutely elite setter, which has made them into one of the big time threats out of the Southern Hills.
That's a great pick. I had highlighted Reagan clear back at the beginning of the year
Yes.
when you asked me to do a little setter thing, and she has been, because again, I always go back to consistency. It's that it's the consistency of the 5-1 offense where you get five hitters and you come in different types of attacks and you get to know every hitter and where they like the ball and so forth, and so it's really really big. Moon is someone that I've started to pay more attention to. Really special athlete.
Mhm.
So that is, and again, I use the term dangerous a lot of time in tournament. I think both of those teams in their respective brackets could certainly be just that.
Yeah, just uh, two programs that are looking to make some big time noise when it comes tournament time. So, one of the things that we talked about moving on, that's probably going to be it for our underrated for this week. We possibly can have some more in the future as well. We will not do an overrated segment as a counter to this. Just throwing that out there. So if someone wants to like send us a DM like, oh, this person's overrated, like, yeah, we ain't going to pay attention to that because these kids are either properly or underrated uh, within our eyes because there are some outstanding athletes. So one of the things that we talked about was like, hey, maybe we'll shorten the episode. We are not shortening the episode as we are now at the same amount of time as we did the other day. We've actually lengthened it going into our final two segments. First, our first time really talking about it this season, cross country. Shane, you had a nice rundown of the Rio Grande meet the other day. You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, on the Rio Grande, the reason people are so interested in this one late in the year is because it's the district site. So a lot of teams like to go, so they'll get 30 plus teams down there. And as my understanding, I'm anxious to get down there and maybe try to see something in the postseason because my mind pictures it the way it always was with a little bit more of a hill and so forth. Well, I guess what's happened now with the growth of football and things like that, it's changed across country towards, because the thing that jumped out at me were some of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the times in the past that I was used to seeing. I was talking to some kids the other day and talked to a couple coaches. I was like, man, those times are faster. And they were explaining to me that it's become a little bit flat, a little bit more by the Bob Evans area, so forth. So that explains this. But on the boys' side there the other day, Unioto just completely dominated. I mean, they whooped the field by almost 100 points. So they come in, they go 6th, 7th, 11th, 12th, and 19th. And when you start talking about a meet that has almost 200 runs, that's obviously really really impressive. But when I look down through the list there, Caleb Kaplinger, William Lynch, they were the 7th and 8th place, and then you get into Ethan Purty and Corbin Scott, just a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
So that was some of them. And then on the Rock Hill, they I believe their team was third. Nixon Snavely was your winner, 15-29. That's getting it.
Yeah.
But probably about 30 some seconds ahead of South Webster's Braden Mantell. So that was on the boys' side, and as I go over to the girls' side, pull that up. The You get an Ignite Athletics. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what that is, but I don't, you know, that's not obviously in the OHSA situation, but Sterling was the next team. 121 was 2 points better than Benton County. And then on the girls' side, here, one of our uh, locals from Adena, Vanessa Conley, the senior, 18:53, almost a minute better than everyone else, and about
Crazy.
198 runs, which is unbelievable. And then it was Kaylin Goss, I believe is the way you say it, from Logan, followed closely by Elena McCown from Ironton, and then Cameron Walker from Unioto there in the fourth spot. So again, when you talk about this level, you start getting into Rio, you get in that district level, you start getting to the Lancaster course, you get into the regional. And that's why you see late in the year when teams get a chance to get on those courses. That's why they try to. That's why you see the big fields, is because everybody's kind of interested in it.
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned Cameron Walker. Good to see that she's back out this year after taking a year off last year. I would never blame a kid for taking a year off of running as much as kids run. But Vanessa Conley winning by almost a minute. Did you say 198 in the field?
I believe it was. Yeah, let's see. I think it was a 199 is what this says
199.
here.
So,
Yeah. So
yeah. So she beats the field by a minute. That not bad. I mean, that's an Adena program. They typically don't have an entire team, but they've had some really elite runners over the last few years. Conley being the latest. Ryan Richendaler was outstanding on the boys' side as well. So, um, congrats to her. And you mentioned Snavely on the boys' side from Rock Hill for winning those big time meets. Some outstanding performers from top to bottom. So we will have more cross country in the future. This is just kind of a quick look at something. And once we get close to the tournament time, or
they
yeah,
still have a little. They still have
yeah,
a little bit, because you usually get more into about mid-October. You get your championship meets early October, and
mhm,
then mid-October is when it starts to ramp up. Because golf kind of beats them here in the
yeah,
postseason a little bit, and then cross country kind of takes over.
yeah. And then speaking of beating them with golf, uh, some league champions were decided this week in golf. So in the SVC, Westfall kind of had decided it at match one. They were outstanding throughout. They just completely dominated. They win all 8 of the SVC matches to get a full 64 points, which doesn't always happen. So a gold ball in uh, golf for Westfall, and they've got a lot of those guys back, including Brendan Bigler, who was under par at the 18 hole. Uh, you know, final 2 rounds down at the Elks in McDermott. I think they technically say Portsmouth, but it's definitely McDermott. I mean, that's where it's at. So, um, but then Bigler was
Well, if it's not the McDermott Elks, it's the
there.
Portsmouth
I
Elks.
know, but still, I'm going with where it's at.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
I
I
was gonna
mean,
say, just I mean, that's just what the golf course
right.
is.
I mean, you work at a school that's not technically in Bainbridge, and it's sort of closer to Bainbridge than Bourneville, I guess. Whatever. Yeah, so it throws me off every time I go out there, which is
Yeah.
pretty often. Westfall, they've got a loaded group of kids, really talented. They've got a chance to make a big time run in the postseason. I think they've got a chance at a top 5 finish at the state as long as they don't trip up on their way. The Zane Trace girls win the SVC a little closer on that. Rosella Lattavo uh, was the medalist. She won most of the meets on the girls' side. She was outstanding throughout from Zane Trace. They had an outstanding performance, which I'll talk about when we get to the sectional results here in just a minute. Um, but it was a good league on the girls' side, which we'll also see in tournament time. We're going to talk about that. 6 of the 8 teams actually advanced in the SVC to the district round, or at least had someone representing them to advance. But in the shack, they do it a little different. They do a 4 rounds, and it's purely on stroke play, which I really like. I think that comes down to kind of a little more traditional of what it is. I do like the SVC's idea of playing each school hosts their own meet. but now we're really low on golf courses, so
We are.
it ends up making it
Yeah.
a little more difficult. But the Shack, 4 matches. Lynchburg with an 8-stroke win over West Union. I believe you said the other day it was like a
I
1-stroke
thought it
lead.
was a one-stroke difference going into that final day.
Yeah, so outstanding work by Lynchburg to get a nice win in the last day to pull ahead by 8 strokes to win a league title. North Adams, Christopher Hall, and here's one with a 1-stroke win over Manchester's Parker Hayslip and a 3-stroke lead over Nolan Wilkin for Player of the Year in the Shack. On the girls' side, the West Union girls win it, led by Nina McCann, who had a 2-stroke win for Player of the Year over North Adams' Emmy Holt. I believe you mentioned Western as well.
Yeah, Western boys, I think I read they won last year, and then
Mm.
I think I read they hit really hard by graduation where they reloaded and they win it again. And so congratulations, Western boys there in the D2 of the SOC. Oak Hill's Colt Rainer was their player of the year.
Yeah, so outstanding work there by Western to reload as opposed to rebuilding. So a couple things on the tournament. So the Division II boys has been pushed back to Friday. It was pushed back to Thursday after today, and then like 45 minutes later, they're like, "Nah, nah, we're going to do Friday." It's like Friday's going to be decent. Like I think Thursday still has a chance of rain, where this way they get a chance. Everyone will start at an even playing field as opposed to some of you having to go through some rain. So we'll have much more on the boys sectional next week, which will probably be our normal episode time, but we'll see on that. On the girls sectional, this is a lot more organized than it was when we first went through it the other day. So, Division One, Unioto wins their second straight sectional. Circleville and Athens move on to the district round as well. I believe they beat Marietta by 4 strokes to move on. Miley Smith, Elise Schoblock, each shooting 87 for the Shermans. Magnolia Holbert shoots a 91, and Peyton Robinson a 97. If those scores can hold up, they finished 1 stroke behind Dover last year at the district for a chance to get to the state. If those scores hold up, they'll definitely have a chance to maybe unseat Dover for a district championship and get their first ever trip to the state tournament as a girls program. Isabel Perini from Circleville shoots a 68 for medalist honor. She was outstanding. Washington Courthouse's Faith Wynn, Jackson's Aubrey Arnold, Fairfield Union's Kendall Mason, and McLean's Kaylin Sterling also advanced to next week's districts as individuals. So should be an outstanding showing from the Division I group. I'm excited to see if Perini can shoot that well at the district
Oh, no
level as
question.
well. But
And Arnold of Jackson, the FAC Player of the Year, Wynn was right there behind. So Chillicothe had knocked Jackson off. I think they were their home course at the end of the year. Jackson still wins that league. So again, Arnold and Wynn both have played some really tough courses throughout the year. So I'll be anxious to follow their progress as well.
And then moving on to Division II, at Buckeye Hills, they were at 3 different courses. At Buckeye Hills, Zane Trace dominated behind Lovato or Lattavo. I'm trying to say it right. I feel bad if I got it wrong, but she shoots at 67, wins it by 7 strokes, like outstanding. And then
That's a phenomenal round on that
yeah,
golf course. If you're not familiar with that golf course, it's got a little length to it. Some of the par threes play really, really hard there. That's impressive.
yeah. So she's been outstanding throughout the year, only a sophomore, and then say she wins by 7 strokes. Oh, Anna Helber shot a 74. And then Mary Helber, also her teammate, shoots a 75. So the Pioneers, with 3 of the top 4 scorers on the day
That'll do.
to run away from the competition. West Union, Logan Elm, Adena also advanced as teams. Individually, Alyssa Smalley from Peebles, Fairfield's Kelsey Crowder, Westfall's Michelle Pickett, and then North Adams' Emmy Holt also advanced. Then moving on to Franklin Valley, Piketon wins with a 4-stroke victory over Minford. Those are the only 2 remotely in the race, as Piketon and Minford were much better than the rest. A big reason why Piketon wins it, medalist Laila Kelley paces the field by 4 strokes, so her 4-stroke win gets them a 4-stroke win. Elena Hitchcock was outstanding for them as well. Peyton Day, Brenna Weaver also played very well for the Red Streaks as they move on to district play. I believe this is the second straight year for Laila Kelley to win it. We know her obviously from basketball,
Yeah.
but an outstanding golfer as
Yeah,
well.
what's interesting about the SVC there again, if for those that aren't familiar with it, there's such a enrollment discrepancy. We're going from like in the mid 90s at the bottom all the way up to like the like 240s maybe on the
Yeah.
girls' side, 220s on the boys'
Mhm.
side. But what happens is come tournament time, especially now with more and more divisions, they start to go their separate ways, and it's kind of interesting to see how it kind of plays out. That they've been pretty battle tested against each other. Now they're
Mhm.
they're they're going their separate ways and doing pretty well.
Yeah, and speaking of other teams from there, so we talked about qualifying, was Menford, Wheelersburg, and Huntington also qualified. Huntington
Yeah.
just keeps breaking their own team record for best team score,
Right.
and I believe they finished 6th as a team this year in the SVC, and they make it to the district level. So that just shows the depth of the SVC in the girls' side. So individually, Rock Hills, Lael Gilmore, Ironton's Marin Walters, and Sarah Murdoch, both from Ironton, and then Colgrove's Presley Shope also advanced. And then the last one at Cliffside, Wellston picks up a pretty sizable win for their sectional crown. That course played a much higher scores across, but Wellston with a pretty easy win, led by Casey Young, Lily Martin, and Piper Stevenson. Other qualifying teams there, Alexander, Chesapeake, and Fairland. Individually, so Samaya Bradburn earned a one-stroke win to bring home medalist honors. She edges out Trimble's Brayley Richards. Also qualifying were Eastern Reedsville's Gabby Lind and Posey Holland from Sims Valley.
Yeah, again, Cliffside, kind of a tough course. Kind of has a little bit of a, which I don't know, that it's kind of like two different golf courses in a way. There, it's got a little bit, I guess, of if you're not familiar with it, maybe a little bit of a Big Beaver feel to part of it,
Mhm.
um, and some of it stretches out a little bit more traditional layout. But no, it's you mentioned not having as many courses, so it's good to have the ones that we do have
Mhm.
that stretch out and not have teams getting on buses and driving forever. You're always going to have some that have to travel, but for the most part, as you're reading those off there, I thought the Southeast District did a pretty good job of utilizing the correct courses.
Yeah, I think they've done, as you mentioned, done a really good job of that as well. So, district play next week for girls. We will have a slight preview for the girls on that next week, but we will talk the boys sectional next week, um, as well as a little more cross country. And then, as always, our typical coverage for football, volleyball, and soccer. Shout out Fayetteville. We will be talking them in soccer. That's definitely one of our first things.
Pay attention to weather in golf because you're seeing it this week with the rain. Then
Mhm.
what will happen is if you start to get a little bit more of those fall conditions by the time they get to the state, a lot of times the state tournament's kind of a wet, cold. Courses seem to play a little longer, a little harder. So that's something to pay attention to. Like I think at JC's today they played and
Yeah.
on the boys' side, and like that, man, that course had to be soggy and it had to be
Mhm.
long,
Yeah.
especially on that front side. So I think that'll be interesting to dissect some of those scorecards.
Yeah, because like, I walked out on the South Webster soccer field, and it hadn't rained for, like, 6 hours at that point last night, and it was just wet. Like, it's still wet, and so I can't imagine what the course was like this morning playing on it when, it was gonna be as damp as it was
Yeah,
today.
it's different. It's a tough walk. Again, you're not out there with a caddy. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
managing your own clubs in your bag and trying to keep the grips dry, and it's a different level, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of competition golf experience. It's tough.
Yeah, definitely can be tough. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think it's a great show. Like I said, I appreciate the effort that you give in the fall to kind of get all of it on the agenda.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed, doing all of it because I think it's just important to highlight those
Mhm.
kids. I think you and I have been doing this long enough to where we really believe in sports. We believe what it does for the education of kids, and it's fun to follow. So, spoiled rotten right now on the volleyball side, and I think we're in for another treat there. Make sure you watch our Logan Elman Circleville
Mhm.
match, and then I think we're in for one of our better football games of the year over the next 2 weeks, really.
Yeah. Should be an outstanding week. Everything here on YouTube. As always, get out, check out the games. I mean, we love when you watch our content. It's going to be here after. So if you go to a game and then you're like, oh man, I want to watch that Miami Trace Chillicothe game, you've got it here. If you go to a game and you want to watch the Miami Trace Chillicothe game while you're at that game, do it. We appreciate any views that you get, but overall, the atmospheres for the kids make it even more memorable. So get out and support the kids in person. But if you can't get there, we'll have everything covered here on Southern Ohio Sports Authority. Um, yeah, so
That's it.
check out our page. We got a lot of videos. We got a lot of different content. SOSAohio.com has a variety of stories throughout the week. We got a lot of pictures. We have some outstanding photographers as well as writers. And since I haven't written in like a week, I'm going to say read the other guys because yeah, whatever. So as always, we appreciate anyone sticking with us tonight. Typically the show goes out on Monday morning. We had some issues on Monday night when we were recording after we had to delay it because I was at a baseball game. And so I appreciate you, Shane, for trying multiple nights. We could have just packed it in, had a lost episode, but
Well, hopefully we'll be back on our Sunday night
yeah.
rotation here this week. That way we can get it out in a more timely fashion.
Yeah, so even if we have to do this similar thing of going live on Sunday night, at least we know that we can do it now. So thank you to Dewey Daly for trying to help us out. Jacob Weiss for helping us out today. Dewey was a little more on Monday. Jacob was a little more today. Yeah, so we appreciate it. Coach's Call-In Show Friday night. Make sure to check that out after the football game. Me, Jeff Miller, and Christian Spradlin will have all the scores and updates along with several coaches calling in as well. So make sure you check out Shane the next 2 nights. Volleyball, Circleville at Logan Elm on Thursday, and then Chillicothe, yeah, football, Miami Trace hosts Chillicothe, a big one on Friday night. So for Shane Combs, I'm John Bruce. Thanks for checking out SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Have a great rest of your week.